Hey pals, and welcome to We Read It One Night, the podcast where two sisters invite you to join the romance revolution by recapping the latest book that brought us joy. Today we're chatting about Marrying Winterborne by Lisa Kleypas, the second book in her latest historical romance series and home to Allison's favorite romance hero of all time, Rhys Winterborne. Rachel, however, hasn't yet boarded the Rhys Winterborne train. Will Allison manage to convince her? Which side of the Winterbourne War will you fall on? Listen and enjoy to find out.
So yeah, our TikTok is taken off again, doing well. People think I'm a librarian, so that's been fun. Hyenas, I never thought that a hyena fun fact would get the people so riled up, but apparently it's a very popular hate topic in the meninist space. I made a post that let me say I learned from a fucking Disney safari tour guide. Okay, so you know right off the bat that it should be the least controversial thing ever because it's fucking Disney and they'll like bend over. You know, the mouse will never do anything controversial. If you've sat through that like America's History show in Epcot, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like what? They cover the Civil War by having a song about like two brothers, one wore blue and one wore gray. Like, no. So the fun fact is that, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the fun fact is that, so most people like have this idea of hyenas as like primarily scavengers. Like basically their whole thing is like eating, you know, dead animals and stealing food from like lions and other animals and stuff. But really they're primarily hunters. The reason that we have this like idea of them as scavengers is because basically, I mean, it's like a long history of like folklore and like legends that are rooted in sexism. If you don't fucking believe me, like the commenters, go look at the National Geographic article. So the fun fact is that, yeah, this idea comes from the fact that they saw the male hunt, that basically the females do all the hunting and it's matriarchal. They're at the top of the pack. Okay. And then like naturalists or whatever saw the males eating leftover food and assumed that means that no hyenas hunt because the males weren't hunting. Okay. And I wrote that on a TikTok and I was like, I ended it with like, so basically, even though they're matriarchal, even hyenas are victims of the patriarchy. Ha ha ha. But it's not even a joke. It's the literal truth. Like they have this bad reputation. Everyone hates them and like probably less conservation goes to them, whatever. All right. And people just got really fired up in the comments. Like, I just started citing this like National Geographic article I found that completely backs me up. And these two people got in this like 80 comment long fight about how like the one guy was like calling me a liar. And then this girl was like coming to my vehement defense. And she was like, did you even read past the paywall? Did you even read the article? Did you read? And finally we got to the point where the man was like, oh, sorry, I actually didn't. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. Okay. Should have ended there. But instead, she didn't quit while she was ahead. She just kept going after him. And she was like, obviously, you just wanted to bully this like poor girl. Like, fuck off. Like, just saying sorry doesn't like get rid of the consequences of your actions. And there's currently another fight that's shaping up to go that same way because people obviously don't like scroll through and read the history. Like, this is lessons on why history is important, people. Like, you could save yourself a lot of heartache.
Honestly, can you blame her though for not quitting? You had to stop fighting with people on TikTok because like it just kept going.
Like, that's why I'm glad I didn't like respond to him to begin with. I know because it's just more proof of you will never win a textual argument over the internet. Like never. Even when you win, you're not going to win.
No. Never. One time after One Direction broke up and Zayn was the first one to release his new song and I like listened to it and I was like, it's average at best. It's not really a bop. I forget which song it was or whatever, but I just tweeted something very benign. I was like, it's fine, but like, it's no What Makes You Beautiful. And I immediate harassment in my replies, like immediate hate. I was like, y'all, I don't want to be bullied for this. And I just deleted the tweet. I was like, I'm not dealing with this.
I researched for a commenter what to do if a polar bear attacks you. In case you weren't aware, as many people decided to comment thinking that they were hilarious. And the first ever people to think of this, what is it? It's like black, fight back, brown, lie down, white, say goodnight.
Yes.
Like
if 10, a polar bear decides to attack you, you're like, sorry.
Right. But you should definitely fight back. Polar bears are known to stalk and attack humans on a regular basis. Like they have no shame. So
good for them.
Basically, like don't be out. It's like I remember seeing it also on TikTok, like people that like are stationed in like the Arctic and stuff. And like when you come outside the building, there's like a specific little like before you don't just open the door and go outside. There's like a little cage to go out specifically to look around and make sure there's no polar bear waiting to attack you, because they will do that. They will like hide and wait, and they'll figure out like all these like tasty little treats are all going into this box. All I have to do is wait for one to come out.
All right.
Anyway.
Today we are doing Marrying Winterbourne by Lisa Kleypas, who is one of the queens of historical romance. It's the second book in the Ravenel series, and I love it. And I know that you were texting me and you were like, it's fine. And I was like, in this house, we will not accept Rhys Winterborne slander, because Rhys Winterborne is our hero.
I have a lot of
Kleypas
slander.
is known for her heroes. She has like some of the most well-known heroes in historical romance. And I love Rhys Winterborne with all my heart. He is my favorite Kleypas hero. I don't think you understand, Rachel. As I was rereading this book, I was like, my goal for this episode is that by the end, Rachel will also be on Team Winterbourne.
The first time I read this book, I didn't really like the first half, but by the time we got to the second, it was like action packed enough and I couldn't wait. And I like finally identified with Helen, Ari the sister, and I like couldn't wait to see what happened next. This time I already knew it was going to happen, and all I could just focus on was how fucking like there's both. I don't know.
Shut the fuck up. Rhys is perfect.
It's also wild that like the main conflict, that like the sister storyline, doesn't even start until like more than halfway through. I feel like overall, what I will say for this book, I feel like there's a much bigger cast of characters that's like bigger and more well developed than usual. Like we get different perspectives. Like there's like a sex scene from not the main couple, like she throws that in.
It's because it's from the first couple.
But not just that, but also just like overall it just feels like a very like she did a good job. Like she didn't just like throw in like NPCs on the sidelines to like give information.
She's very good at world building. I feel like that's one of her specialties. Like she like makes her worlds very rich, and they're also like all like interconnected as well. There's
definitely.
Like the Kleypas cinematic universe. Some background. So our hero is Rhys Winterborne. He is Welsh. He is so hot, and I would like to marry him. He owns a department store, basically like Victorian era Macy's, and he's like the richest man ever. And the heroine is Helen, who is like, I don't know, super pale and like nice. And she also really likes to take care of orchids. And she is the oldest daughter of the Ravenel family, who are like these wild, whatever, like aristocrats. So the background of whatever, they're known for like their tempers or whatever. Yeah. But Helen is like super like chill and like nice and kind. And she's like, cool.
To a fault.
Shh, shh. Listen, let me give the background. It's important because so romances the majority of the time are standalone, and like technically all the books in the Ravenel series are supposed to be standalone, but I think more so than some of Lisa's other books that I've read, they're not really standalone. Because
for sure.
In order to get the full Helen Rhys story, you kind of have to read the first book. And so I would recommend reading the first book, but like only reading the Rhys and Helen parts, and like
you told me not to read it. I still haven't read it. I feel like it starts in the middle. It's so confusing. I remember being so confused. I was being like, what is going on?
Okay, so let me give everyone a background of Rhys and Helen's story in the first book. So basically, Rhys is BFFs with the hero of the first book, and he and the hero of the first book get in a train accident and all have to recover at the Ravenel country estate. And Helen is there, and Rhys is like a big old cranky little boy to everybody because he has a broken leg and like he's in pain. But then Helen is like, somebody needs to take care of this loser. And so she goes and takes care of him. So basically, like, Helen nurses Rhys back to health, and she's like super soft with him, and he's just like gone for her. Like from that moment, he's like, oh my fucking God, like, who is this angel? I love her so much. And the plot of the first book is that the Ravenels are like super poor. Their estate is in like ruins or whatever. And so Helen and Rhys get engaged in order to like help the family like funds. But then because of, circumstances, plot reasons, by the end of the first book, they are not engaged anymore, because what happened was that Rhys like kissed her, and Helen's like super innocent and like, doesn't know shit about anything because she's just like grown up in her little country estate for like 20 years. and she like gets kissed and she's like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. And then, you know, they're upset about that. And then she gets a migraine, which I relate to. And then the heroine of the first book like goes to Rhys and is like, the engagement's over. Cause the family also has like, they get rich all of a sudden because of like, you know, land stuff. And so like she doesn't need to marry Rhys anymore. And so the beginning of this book is their engagement is broken off, but Helen is coming to Rhys's department store and she's like, I am gonna get my man back.
So yeah, Rhys has a Welsh accent, which I still think it just sounds okay. It's the same Welsh accent that the narrator of Howl's Moving Castle does. And I remember thinking, like, I was shocked like halfway through that book that like it was a real accent, like it was actually supposed to be Welsh, because I was like, this just sounds like it sounds like he's like, you know, English as a second language, and he's like, so I don't know where it would be from, like, but like it sounds like he's like, well, I guess it is. I guess if you speak Welsh, like you speak a different language, like makes sense. But like
it is.
I also
English as a second language.
But I looked up, but I know, yeah. Well, but not for most people like learning nowadays. But thanks to people like the villain of this book trying to stamp it out in schools. But anyway, I looked it up, and the Welsh accent that all audiobook narrators seem to do does not seem to be the standard Welsh accent. Like I found YouTube videos of like different accents, and it only sounded like this niche northern one that like one person in one of the videos I had.
Well, it's like how British accents a lot of times, like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like there's a British accent that everybody does, but like that's not the majority of British accents.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I imagine Rhys as like this like bear of a man. Like, you remember Pa?
He's supposed to be.
Okay, so let me set the stage. Anyone who knew me in college will know. So like if I marry a man, the man that I picture like being my husband and like having children with, he's like large generally, and like has a beard, and he like chops wood and wears flannel, and like the children call him Pa. Okay. Specifically Pa. Like that, a man that like looks like he would be called Pa, you know? Like that kind of man. And that's who I picture for Rhys. Like Rhys is Pa in my mind. Except Pa originally had red hair and Rhys has black hair. So like I don't care. Pa is now interchangeably. But that's also why I'm always so like, I see fan cast for Rhys and they cast him as like you remember, you know, Discovery of Witches? Matthew Goode. The main guy, Discovery of Witches, like I see people like casting him as Rhys, and I'm like, that man, listen, Matthew Goode is very hot, but he is no Pa. Like he is father or papa. Like he is no just single syllable Pa, and Rhys Winterborne is a Pa. Okay, so we begin. Rhys is in his department store office. What?
I was just gonna say we're finally beginning.
Rhys is at his department store office. His very competent secretary comes in. Her name is Mrs. Fernsby, and she's like, there's a woman at the door. And Rhys is like, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm busy. And he's like, I don't know. She's very fancy. And then Rhys immediately, his Helen senses are tingling. And he's like, the woman that broke up with me, but I've also been pining after for like 2 whole books. That woman?
He's also like, oh, I can't wait for her to like show up and grovel. I'll like turn her down.
He's like, so literally, yeah, like Rhys is like, I would love for Helen to beg me to take me back, just so take her back just so I can reject her. But then like Rhys, like 5 minutes after Helen asks him to take her back, is like putting on the clown makeup, just like full simp mode. Like, I love him so much. He's such a soft little boy, but
my God,
he's such a cinnamon roll. He really is. He's the hard exterior, and he's just so soft and gooey on the inside. I just want to say something about this whole scene. This whole scene goes on for like 3 chapters where they're like in his office, like negotiating and like deciding whether they're going to get back together or not. And I just think this scene does like so much in terms of like establishing their characters and also foreshadowing like their growth. It perfectly highlights the dynamics of their relationship and how like Helen softens Rhys,
treats her like a child the entire time.
I disagree. No, I was gonna say, and how I wrote this down for later, but like Rhys, like, yes, he's both very much like, I want to put you in my large coat and like just keep you warm and safe for the rest of your life and never let you leave. But he also like respects Helen in a way and like makes Helen feel strong in a way that nobody else does.
I'm not gonna, I mean, he definitely it'd be hard for him to treat her worse than the other adults in her life have up until this point. But again, it's very much like a adult-child dynamic that I don't like. Like Helen is just like sheltered in the extreme, even for historical. Like she's just so like know nothing, and he like
Yeah, but she
teaches
gets
her things, but like
the book is
I don't
her kind
know.
of finding her voice and finding her confidence.
Sure,
Helen is a poor abused
but
like
I know, but
anyway.
yeah, I feel like the
Okay.
solution for that is not. Yeah, okay.
Rhys hears that Helen's at the door and he's like, I
Okay,
can't
we're
believe.
past that. Moving
No,
on.
but I have a quote to say. I have
Okay.
a quote.
All right.
He says, she wouldn't have taken such an enormous risk without a good reason. And I'm like, my poor baby Rhys. Like, why can't you accept that you're the good reason? That like she wants you back. Like
He assumes she wants money, and he's like, if you don't have a bank account, I'll open one for you. No bank would let a woman open it for herself. But I was like, but they let a strange man open it for her? Like
yes.
what? But I thought it had to be a relative. Like,
No.
isn't that the whole point? It makes no sense. Whatever.
Strange man.
So stupid.
He's Rhys Winterborne. He like owns half of London. But also Helen takes her gloves off and Rhys like nearly creams his pants. And like that's just why like I love historicals so much, because like you would never get that in a contemporary. Like men see my hands all the time. They're nothing special. But like in historical, they're like, oh.
In a contemporary, it would be like she took off her jacket and her shirt slipped. I saw her shoulder. Like that's what it would be.
No, but like it doesn't. The yearning and like the sexual tension is just like by nature so heightened in historicals in a way that's just not possible with contemporaries, unless it's like, I don't know, like an Amish romance or something. Like I don't know. Like
you read those?
No, I read a mafia romance, but even in mafia
not the
romances,
same as Amish.
not
Yeah.
No, but like I mean, in mafia romances is often like the innocent and like the dark, scary man. So it has a little bit of the same dynamics, but like there's just nothing like a historical in terms of like yearning.
So basically, Mr. Winterbourne or Rhys, Mr. Winterbourne, Rhys sees an opportunity and he's like, "All right, I'll take you back, but I need a guarantee. Like, we have to
wait. Okay, you're speeding way too fast. I just want to know like a third of my notes are this one scene.
I hate this scene with every fiber of my being.
I love this scene so much.
It's just like in the middle of the action, like
no,
I'm like, why do these people? Well, you read the first book and you told me to read it. I'm like, why do these people care
really
about each other? I have no background.
The whole first book, just waiting to get to the second book.
I'm just telling you. When I read this, I was like, I feel nothing for these people because I have no reason to like them or like them together because I have no background.
Oh, okay. So I do want to say that like Rhys, like you mentioned, you see it as like a parent-child dynamic, but I see it as like Rhys thinks of Helen as very delicate, and he definitely like underestimates her in the beginning, but like part of the journey of their relationship is him like both like something I really like. It's like this good balance of like him maintaining thinking of her as like delicate and thinking of her as something to be treasured while also like recognizing her inner strength. And I like that Helen doesn't have to become this like super strong badass in order to still like be respected. Like her gentleness is like her core character trait. But yeah, Rhys is like, I know that you fucking hate me. Like you freaked out when I kissed you. And Helen is like, dude, that was my first kiss. Like I don't know what the fuck was going on. And Rhys just has like a brain blast. He's just immediately like he has just the knees knocked out from under him. He's like, oh my God, I'm such a monster. I can't believe I kissed her. I took away her first kiss and I didn't, and I don't know how to be gentle. And I don't know. I'm a brute. I'm a Welsh brute. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're a cinnamon roll. And then he calls her Cariad for the first time. And I love endearments in other languages. Usually with Scottish romances, it's like Mo Cherie. I can't speak Gaelic. It's that one. It's Mo Cherie. I don't think so because it's Gaelic and that sounds too French.
Oh, in Gaelic. Oh, I thought you were saying French. Yeah.
No, it's Chidre.
Oh, you're saying how to pronounce.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's the Scottish thing. And then here in Welsh, we have Cariad. And I just love, and he has multiple Welsh endearments. He calls her like Baichan. But this is the first time he calls her that, and I love it. It's just so cute. And then she tries to kiss him because she's like, I want to be together again. And he's like still resisting, and she kisses him, and he's just like a deer in headlights. Like I just imagine like his eyes the size of dinner plates. He's like, oh my God, what's going on? She's fucking kissing me.
He's like, could it be that what he had read as disdain had been shyness? What he thought like rudeness, innocence, or something? That's very common. Most common thing that people mistake for rudeness is shyness. So remember that next time.
I should like keep a bottle. a vodka nearby when we record, just so that every time you share this fun fact, I can take a shot.
I feel like people need to remember it. Like
It's true. Shyness is often mistaken for pride.
Or rudeness, or just like
Yeah.
standoffishness. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, so Helen explains that like she likes him not just because she thinks he's hot, although she thinks he's like super hot. And she's like, ever since that kiss, like even though it freaked me out, like I keep having wet dreams about it. And it's like,
even though I don't know what sex is, I'm having sex dreams about this. And I
well,
wake
I think
hot
that
with
you can-
shame. And here's the thing, Helen feeling guilty about kissing Rhys like never goes away. Like till the very
What do you
last.
mean?
Maybe like in the very
like,
last scene.
I
She's
think it goes
constantly
away pretty
like,
quickly.
I feel so guilty. No, I remember at least as late as the greenhouse scene. Although maybe that's because she's not telling him something. Whatever.
She's not telling. Yeah, she feels guilty because she's not telling him something, not because. No, Helen, like very much part of her sexual journey is having to unlearn being like told that like her body is shameful and like her sexual desires are shameful.
I just like really don't like that it's
handled really well.
Yeah, I guess it's just like being taught by like the only person that she'll ever get to sleep with, which he also says explicitly, which I usually don't mind that, but I just really didn't like it because I'm like, what if you're actually a bad kisser, Rhys? Like maybe she should get to kiss other people.
His name is Rhys. He can't be a bad kisser. It's against the rules.
Anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, so she doesn't just like him because she thinks he's hot, but she also like likes him because he makes her feel like important and like intelligent, respected. Even though like he kind of walks all over her, but that's just because like I don't know that that's necessarily Rhys's fault. It's just because like Helen has been so conditioned her whole life to like allow people to walk all over her because her like, you know, parents are super abusive. And her journey throughout the book is like learning how to maintain gentleness while like having a backbone. And she's like, I need someone who's not just gonna like coddle me and like keep me up in my ivory tower like I've been like what's been happening my whole life.
Yeah, she says that, and then he's like,
but he does.
Like what?
Like I don't know. Like I think he like whatever. Helen starts to cry and Rhys is immediately like, I don't know what to do. Oh my God. And I'm just like, I love a man who just like feels like he's been punched to the gut as soon as he sees his lady cry. But then I also love a man who like doesn't understand like how to hug. He's like, I don't know what to do. And he's just like patting her. And he's like, nothing is worth your tears. And she says, you are. And I went, ah! Rachel's already tired of me. We're not even like 2 chapters.
Oh my God. This is just anyway. This is when he starts scheming. He's like, all right, I can take her back, but I need to seal the deal first and like make sure that she can't back out. And he's like, all right, like ultimatum, sleep with me and we can get engaged again. And then
so background for this, I'm not done talking about
I'm not criticizing. Okay.
I'm not done talking about
I'm going to eat a pretzel.
The background for this is that when the heroine of the first book, who's Helen's sister-in-law, came to like tell Rhys the engagement was off, he was pissed and he like, you know, threatened her in classic Lisa Kleypas fashion. And he's like, yeah, well, like, even if we did say we wanted to get married again, like there's the little matter of like your cousin / the hero of the first book being like, no, you threatened my wife, so you can't get together. So Rhys is like, well, like if we have sex, then like he has to let me marry you no matter what. And she's immediately like, she's like, no. Helen is also like annoyed that Kathleen and Devon, we should say their names because they're actually going to be real characters, who are the hero and heroine of the first book, like didn't tell her the truth of like what happened and how they like broke off the engagement and stuff. They just like did it for her and like treated her like a child. Helen's like, well, what if we have sex and then you ditch me? And Rhys is like, nah, like once we have sex, like he's like just so earnest about it. He's like, absolutely not. Like once we have sex, like you're my wife. And he's like, it'll be as like legit as if we like held an oathing stone and got married on Welsh soil. And like now I like low-key want to get married with an oathing stone, just like where you like hold like I guess like a little rock between your hands like when you get married, and then you like throw it into a lake and like your like love becomes part of the land. I don't know, I just think it's really fucking cute.
But yeah, here I'm thinking like, Helen, if you think there's any chance of his like quote unquote vindictiveness, like of sleeping with you and then screwing you over, like that's a big red flag. And right after that, she's like, Mr. Winterbourne's determination seemed to feed on her distress. And I'm like, that is not great.
She doesn't actually think that. But then she turns around and she's like thinking, she's basically just like, I may regret it if I marry Rhys, but I would regret it more if I didn't. And the thing that ultimately changes her mind. So we mentioned at the beginning that Helen has like a shit ton of orchids. And in the first book, she gave Rhys like her most temperamental orchid as like a gift. And when she's in his office, she sees like a whole row of like how to care for orchid books. And when they broke off the engagement, Rhys sent the flower back, and Helen was like, "Oh my gosh, like not only did the flower survive, but it thrived. Like, what the fuck?" And Helen like sees the books and she's like, "Oh, you took care of it yourself?" And he was like, "Yeah, I didn't have any intention of failing your little test." She's like, "It wasn't a test. Like, I fully expected you to kill it and I was gonna marry you anyway." And Rhys was like, "Yeah, but I didn't. I kept it alive."
Yeah, I did like that. That was funny.
It was really cute.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then she says yes to like having sex with him. And Rhys is just shook. And then this is when Helen like sort of starts to develop a backbone. She's like, our problem was that I didn't communicate with you and that I was like too shy and I was too reserved. So like, I'm going to try to be more honest with you. I fucking hate my engagement ring. It's like too big. I can't play the piano with it. I want a new one. And so Rhys goes and gets her a new one. He's like, I'll buy you a piano. And Helen is like, oh, I'll play for you every night. And Rhys just has a super soft fantasy of like listening to Helen play the piano for him and then like going up and making like sweet, sweet love to her like every night. And it's just so cute. It's so domestic.
Yeah. And then they have their like,
why are you not impressed? You like playing the piano?
Yeah. I don't like playing the piano for people though. It's like so uncomfortable. I hate it. I just like get full body like tingles, but in like a bad way, like cringles.
Pandora, is that you?
Yeah. That's Helen's sister who likes to make up words. I do like that. That's part of the like very much. Well, she's gonna be the heroine of the next book, but part of like the world building, I guess. But this is when they have their cute little conversation about how he's like so non-sexist that his secretary is a woman, but like they have the long discussion about Helen. Helen is like, yeah, of course a woman can be a secretary, and like this whole thing about how great he is because he hired her even though his like manager didn't want to. But I'm like, there's no reason to bring this up just to like agree with it, Helen. Like, whatever.
She asked why. She's like, oh, it's weird that you have a woman secretary.
Yeah.
Which is weird objectively. Like, it makes sense in Victorian era England that the character would be like, oh, that's weird.
I said that at the beginning. I get that is how it would be. I just don't need that in my historical.
Whatever. I like Mrs. Fernsby.
Then, so this is when the jeweler, right? So she does get a new ring.
So Helen is talking to the jeweler, and then Rhys is stress eating peppermint creams, which is like his like snack of choice. Yummy. And something that I do love about the Ravenel series is that like each book has like a food item associated with it, and Lisa Kleypas provides the recipes to each one at the back. So the peppermint. So I want to make peppermint creams.
Yeah, those sound really. Yeah, I remember you showing me. Yeah, before I even read the book the first time.
I sent you like a screenshot. I was like, I want to make this recipe.
You don't like peppermint, I thought.
I don't like peppermint in my hot chocolate. I don't like peppermint in things that aren't supposed to be pepperminty.
Hot chocolate is 100%
anyway, here's the recipe.
Half of these peppermint creams have chocolate on them.
In my book. It's powdered sugar, meringue powder, a pinch of salt.
Meringue powder? Are they vegan or something?
Like meringue.
Instead of eggs?
No,
meringue is eggs.
Meringue.
Meringue is made of egg whites.
Oh, she does say most recipes called for real egg whites, but we got better and safer results by using meringue powder.
Huh. Because you don't really cook them, I guess.
Yeah. If you're not a fan of peppermint, you can substitute any flavor you prefer. Vanilla works beautifully. But yeah, so it's powdered sugar, meringue powder, salt, peppermint extract, and milk.
Wait, I could make that right now if I use like egg whites because I have peppermint extract from making this like cake a few months ago. Wow. Huh. But do you cook them? Like, would the egg whites be like raw if you don't use the meringue extract?
You roll the dough, you put them on wax paper to dry and set for at least 15 minutes. Yeah, it seems that you do not cook them.
Okay, I would want meringue powder then.
I'm sure that you can find recipes online that do require you to
How
cook
is there a dough
eggs.
when it's just like sugar and I pictured it was just like
that's
meringue
how it
drops
got. Listen, I'm just reading Lisa's directions.
Interesting.
Anyway, Rhys is like stress eating these peppermint creams while Helen is getting a new ring.
And then later, that also bothered me. He later has the audacity to tell a child she can only eat 2. Very rude.
It's very soft. We'll talk about that later. And she's looking at jewelry, and then she like picks out this ring that's like, you know, it's like pretty, but it's not super like valuable, because the ring that he originally gave her was this like giant diamond that definitely is a like walking human rights violation. And he's like, it's a semi-precious stone, Helen. You can't have a semi-precious stone. You have to have a precious stone. And she's like, Rhys, I like it. And then Rhys is immediately like, God damn it, like she makes her happy.
Well, I actually sympathize with Rhys here, because I feel like he's going to be the one getting judged. And when people see that and they're like, oh, he couldn't even buy her like a nice engagement ring. Like,
yeah, no, that is his concern. He's like, the wife of Winterbourne should have a nice ring.
right.
But I love that like a core personality trait of Rhys is that like he is physically impossible of not like respecting Helen's opinions, even if he like struggles with them. Even if he's like fundamentally opposed, he's like, I cannot not give Helen anything that she wants. Like,
is that not
I'm
the bare
physically
minimum,
incapable. What?
Is that not the bare minimum though? Like,
no, but I don't know, just like his internal struggle every time where he's like fighting his like baser instincts of like materialism and capitalism, and like, wow. And then Helen's just like, no, I just want a piano and a nice ring. And Rhys is like,
she's like, I never judge the worth of something by how much it actually costs. A pretty sentiment, but as the owner of a department store, it gave him chest pains.
yes. But I'm also like that whole like, I never judge something by how much it costs. I'm like, what a rich person thing to say.
Yeah. No, my first thought was like, that's complete bullshit. But then I realized like it applies like sometimes. But like,
yeah.
I guess, yeah, it depends how you define worth.
But yeah, Rhys is like, you need something else. Like, you have to ask for like a tiara or a necklace in order to like balance the ledger. And like Helen's like, Rhys, there's no ledger in relationships. She's like, that's not how relationships work, my friend. Like, it's just two people being together. And then he proposes to her a second time. And like the first proposal, they like talk about it. I don't think you see it in the first book. So don't worry. This isn't a situation where you missed out on something in the first book. He's like, the first book, he was just like, here's the advantages of you marrying me. And like, we will be good together. But then in this proposal, she's like, how would you do it if you were romantic? And he is like, I would teach you a Welsh word, hiraeth, which is a feeling of incompleteness that every Welshman has. And Helen is like, do you feel incomplete? And he's like, not when I'm with you. I love it.
Nice. Now it's time for him to get his insurance.
Yeah, so they go into his house, which is connected to the store through like this fancy hallway. Rhys's shoulders take up the width of the hallway. They take up the width of the corridor. This is why I get mad when people cast him as a skinny actor. I'm like, no, Rhys is a bear. Actually, he's compared to a wolf on multiple occasions throughout the book, but he's like a bear-like man. Like, bear-like man has never applied to anyone better in my opinion.
But later on, he's described as weighing at least 14 stone, which is only 196 pounds, which is like not, you know, it depends how tall you are, but he's supposed to be very tall. So I have a hard time imagining how someone can be like so big that people like comment, but only weigh 196 pounds. I guess there's that word at least.
Like, I've long ago decided not to like
question.
Listen when authors, not just in romance, but like authors of any sort, tell me like how much a character weighs. I'm like, no. I'm like, I just don't believe that people in general, and this applies to me in general, like, I could not tell you what a 196-pound man looked like. Couldn't tell you. And I mean, obviously it depends. Like, someone who's like 6'2" and 196 pounds is going to look a lot different than someone who's 5'6". But like, that's my thing. Is like, there's no way for you to have like an image of like what
I definitely
a man of a certain weight and a certain height looks like. Because it depends on like body mass. It depends on like muscle.
Right, but generally speaking, sure. But if I tell you that someone is like 120 pounds, there's no way that they're big unless they're like 4'6" or something. You know what I mean? So like there's a range. And I feel like I personally have a much better grasp on it because I'm just like very aware of people's heights because I was forced to be aware of my height. Like, the reason I know that I was 5'9.5" on the first day of 7th grade is specifically because I knew that like every new person I met would ask, and they did. So I would say that I have like a better than average concept of like shapes and sizes of people. And 196 pounds is like, yeah, not unless he's like 5'8". like
Yeah,
then
but I'm
maybe,
saying
but
I don't
he's
think
supposed to be
most
tall.
authors have that
Yeah, that's true.
concept, and so I generally like just ignore that. Especially when it's supposed to be like, you know, like in Twilight when you tell me that Bella's 110 pounds and she's like 5'4", I'm like, okay, fine, like she's like
Right.
skinny and she's like normal height. But especially with men, I just feel like because
Yeah,
the
it's
majority of
true.
books that I read are from women, I just feel like there's just like
Yeah.
so little concept of like what like height and weight in
Yeah,
like
it's
men
true.
looked like for me that I just like I'm
I
like
feel
I
like
don't
it's
believe
worse for
authors really have a
women.
concept.
Yeah, I feel like it's worse for women overall. I feel like that pisses me off so much. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
I just feel like there's usually a lot less like body diversity with women. And like in terms of height, you know what I mean? There's like a
Yeah, I guess
20-pound
so.
weight range and they're all like 5'4" to
No.
5'6"
Oh, in books,
usually.
I guess.
In
Yeah.
books, that's what I'm saying, in
But it
books.
still bothers me.
Yeah, no.
Like
I'm not saying
online
it's a good
reviews.
thing. I'm just saying like
It bothers me because of it bothers me on two levels. Like because of just like, lack of diversity, but also just the lack of like specificity and yet the
yeah.
lack of precision.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I don't like having specific numbers. I don't want you to
Sure.
tell me like I don't want you to describe a character to me in detail.
No, but the
Like,
implication that giving you their weight will tell you like everything about them. That
yeah,
means nothing. Like
no.
literally nothing.
No. All you need to know about Rhys is that his shoulders take up the width of the corridor. That's what you
Okay,
need to
sorry.
know.
That was a bit of a tangent. We're already an
That's
hour in.
important.
Oh my god. Yeah.
That's important. Okay, so they go and they're talking about how when Helen nursed him back from his sick bed and how like he was like super delirious and she like allowed him to rest his head on her like bosom and she was like, "Oh my god, I didn't think you remembered that." And he says, "I'll remember it until the last hour of my life." And I'm just like, he's so gone for her. And that's something I saw someone talking about this book and someone was talking about how like like so like insta love, like I think this is a book of insta love. Like they're really just like gone for each other like from the get-go. And insta love is often used as in like a negative review of, oh, this book was
Yeah.
super insta love, it was super bad. But this is like, I don't know, I guess it's just because Lisa Kleypas is a fucking genius, but I don't like, this is a situation in which I'm like, this is insta love, but like their relationship also grows and matures and like I believe it. You know what I mean? I believe that like there are people that exist where they just like you meet someone and you're like, this is it.
I guess so. Yeah. I just like don't identify with Helen at all until the last like fifth of the book. At which point I identify with her a lot, but like yeah, I guess. Sure. Yeah. I wouldn't use I'll give it this. I would not use insta love in a pejorative manner to describe this. Definitely not.
Would you like to talk about them having sex now? Yeah.
Sure.
I've reached the end of my notes of the office scene.
Oh my god. So, yeah, as we previously foreshadowed, there's a fruit fly. Helen knows literally nothing. She doesn't even really know what like her period is. Like she didn't we have like this thing. Was Theo like abusive? Her brother who's dead.
Okay.
Was
Yeah.
he
So I mean, this is from the first book. Theo was like the famous Ravenel temper Theo was their older brother and
right? But was he
was married to Kathleen and he like 3 days after their wedding like
dies?
gets angry,
Sure.
rides a horse and breaks his neck. So yeah, he was generally like pretty like absent. Like he was like the traditional like older aristocratic brother. Like he doesn't really give a shit about his younger sisters. He's like
Okay.
entitled. But like he has this really sweet moment where like Helen gets her period and she has no fucking clue. She's like telling Rhys, she was like, I literally thought I was dying. Like I was
Yeah.
bleeding and I had no idea what was going on. And Theo was like home from school and came in and like explained to me basically like what was up and like gave me sanitary towels and then like took me to like one of the maids so like she could like give me the down low.
Yeah. Okay, because I like for some reason got it in my head that Theo was like abusive to Kathleen, and I was like, I mean, I get where you're getting these like redeeming scenes, but also like I need to know exactly what he did before I
He
know like
wasn't
how.
abused. Like the Kathleen Theo backstory was that they like liked each other. Like it was theoretically like a love match, but not like a romance love match.
Mhm.
And But then, like, on their wedding night, he got super drunk and then came in to, like, have sex with her. And she was like, no, like, we're not having sex, like, while you're drunk. And then he got, like, mad because of the famous Ravenel temper TM. And then they, like, so, like, she's still, like, a virgin when he dies, basically. It's, like, a big plot point of the first book. But he didn't, like, do anything. He just, like, you know, came in, tried to have sex, and then, like, left after she said no.
Yeah. Basically, Helen's like, oh, it's for the husband to decide what the bride should know and explain it to her on the wedding night. Like, okay, LOL.
She's just parroting, though.
Yeah,
she's parroting.
I know.
She was like, I was taught that my, like, vulva was a shameful place. Like, I was taught that babies came out from under gooseberry bushes by the nanny. Like, she's like, I don't think you understand, like, how little I've been told. But Rhys is, like, super patient. And so he's like, I'm going to explain to you, like, as we go along. I'm not just going to, like, roar into this, you know, without a care in the world. And so he's, like, making her feel comfortable. He takes off her dress without her knowing it, like, unbuttons it. And, like, I really like that. She's, like, standing there and he's like, why don't you take your dress off? And she's like, but it's not, oh. And it's, like, falls to the ground. She's like, oh my, how did you do that? It's like in a Lady's Guide when she just, like unbuttons her dress, just, like, suddenly takes her clothes off from, like, one beat to the next. And she's like, how did you do
that? Yeah, I do like that. It's a good trope. Oh, what?
What?
Where are my clothes?
My clothes. Yeah. They're gone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and she's like, yeah, she is like, you know, there's no way to, like, explain to him, like, just how, like, fucked up this was. Like, such lessons could never entirely be unlearned. Which brings me to our pregnancy TikTok.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I did. Wait, yeah, I wrote a note. Where did I write this? I wrote a note about, like, Rachel's pregnancy TikTok. I literally made a note, like, at this point where I was like, it's the shame about pregnancy.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's like, would you believe that after all these years, the idea of being pregnant still feels vaguely embarrassing to me? Like, what? Everyone is just going to know you had sex for 9 months? Common sense works hard, but the purity industrial complex works harder. Anyway, what I'm saying is, I get why Mary did what she did. I feel like that's Helen right now. She's like,
yep. Yeah, so Rhys takes off her stockings, which are, like, super damaged and, like, old because, like, again, her family was poor up until very recently. And he, like, takes them off and he's like, oh, like they're, and they've, like, made, like, marks. No, he doesn't rip them. So when he takes them off and they've, like, made marks in her, like, thighs. Like, they're not good stockings. And, like, the garters, the ties around her thighs, because that's how you kept the stockings up. She had to, like, tie them so tight. No, he doesn't rip them though. So he take off the stockings. He's like, these aren't worth touching you. And he, like, throws one of the stockings in the fire and burns it. And Helen is immediately like, no, like, you're not allowed to destroy my possessions. Like, just because it doesn't mean anything to you doesn't mean it didn't mean something to me. Like, I chose to, like, mend my stockings so that I could, like, buy books and other stuff that I wanted. And Rhys is like, you're right. Like, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have treated your possessions, like, with carelessness. Like, I shouldn't have just, like, told you that your things weren't important.
But then he still destroys her stuff on at least 2 separate occasions later on.
What's the other? Oh, the bow.
The bow, that's an accident. I was about to be riled up. There's another one that I don't think I wrote down, but I remember thinking it somewhere in the middle of the narrative.
He destroys her chemise in this scene, but he does. He is like, it's like a joke. Like, they make a little joke out of it. And then he's also like, he tells her that her vagina is like an orchid to try to, like, you know, make her less ashamed about it. And I was like, both Lisa Kleypas and I have been waiting 1.125 books for this reference. Like, I have been waiting for the orchid vagina comparison, and here it is. The vulva looks like an orchid, like orchid petals. It's amazing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I was like, thank God, Lisa. Like, thank God that you went there, because I was waiting for this.
I feel like for it to be realistic for her to get it, he should have, like, pulled out a little, like, hand mirror or something, because otherwise, like, I don't understand how she just suddenly, like, realizes, oh, you're right, it does look like it. Like, you've never seen it.
But she's just imagining it. Like, he's, like, tracing the, like, parts, and he's like, look, these are, like, and he knows about orchid parts. He knows the, like, different terminology because he read his orchid books.
That's true.
Helen feels Rhys's dick, and she reacts like a scared kitten. As I mentioned earlier, Rhys is compared frequently to a wolf. Helen is constantly compared to a cat, constantly compared to a kitten, all the time. There are many quotes. Like,
I wrote them down too, but I didn't make the connection until right now.
This is traditional Catskill, like, stuff where, like, Helen is like a kitten the whole time.
But she's a kitten, not a cat. That's what I'm saying.
No, at one point she is compared to a cat. I wrote down the quote. He makes her come twice. So unlike Anthony Bridgerton, Rhys cares about foreplay.
That's true.
He does eat her out on multiple occasions. Yeah, so Helen goes to sleep. She takes a little nap like a little cat after they have sex. And Rhys just like cuddles with her and just like watches her sleep for an hour. And I'm like, I know that we roasted Eddie Boy Cullen so hard for watching Bella sleep, but like it's really fucking cute when Rhys does it.
She knows he's in the room. It's not as weird if it's like consensual, I guess. Like I guess you can't technically when you're asleep, but
to
like
being watched when you're sleeping.
She's aware that he's there.
Yeah.
Like so now he immediately starts scheming. He's like, we have to elope. And I was confused by this because I'm pretty
panic. It's not scheming.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't. He's like, fuck. Like somehow Helen's gonna get taken away from me.
And then Helen is like really against this idea when she finally wakes up. But I swear when I should have gone back to check, but like when Helen walks into the office, her first thing is like, we should just elope, isn't it? Like she's like, we don't, but then she's like vehemently against it.
So she's like, let's elope. Because at that point, when she suggests it in the office, she's like, she's just trying to say like whatever. She just wants him back. So she's just trying to like throw out things that she thinks is going to like get him to take her back. But then when she's like, we can elope, he's like, no, I don't want to elope because then no one's going to like believe that you went with me willingly. So I want a big wedding. And then now Rhys is like, why the fuck did I say I wanted a big wedding? Like, I literally just want to marry her now. What the fuck? And then Helen is like, no, like I still believe that you want a big wedding. And like, also like my brother died less than a year ago and you have like dumb Victorian mourning rituals. So she's like, I want to like honor him. And like, we were originally going to wait 5 months, like until June, the first time we were engaged. So like, why can't we do that now? And Rhys is like, I'm so horny that I might die. And Helen is like, not my problem.
And he's like, oh, it's gonna be so hard to not cheat on you if I like have to wait that long. I'm like, dude, just like jerk off, like get over it. Like,
well, that's what he says. He says he was like, men are driven to self molestation.
Like, oh no, I think he says abuse, like something like that,
self abuse like, or whatever. Right, which I was like, okay, so you have to jerk off. But she's like, what were you gonna do originally? And Rhys is like, I hadn't even considered it. But he's like, now there's like no fucking way. Like, I absolutely cannot be with anyone besides you ever.
And she's like, I'm afraid. Classic line. I'm afraid there's nothing you can bribe me with. You already promised me the piano. Good for you, Helen.
Yes. She goes and takes a little bath and she gets into the bath like a cat making its way across even ground, which is such good imagery. Because I can imagine like the gentle like pitter, like patting of the footsteps across the tile floor.
Like that. Definitely. It's like, I mean, I don't know if I forget if we've like brought this up on the podcast before, but those videos you keep sending me, I need to like go to the source and just watch 100% of them of that guy who puts like a GoPro on his cats and just like, it's like you're moving as a cat. And I just watch that and I'm like, I just feel like I need to be a cat. I was meant to move like that. I'm not kidding. I was meant to be in that form and move like that. Like, just like the stealthily like crossing it, just like little sniff to the plants, like
just plopping on the ground delicately,
and like little hello to your other cat friends, like little like jump up on the roof, like plod 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 plod, jump plod 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 plod, sniff. Just search like GoPro cat video. I bet you'll find it.
Like from the eyes of a cat. Like I think that's what the videos are often called.
Yeah.
I'll try to link one below if I can find, because I always find them like randomly on Instagram Explore. So if I can find like a YouTube channel with them, I'll put it in the description. He takes her home in the carriage. He takes her home in his carriage and he like the footman opens the door, but Helen hasn't finished talking. So Rhys is like, no, my lady is going to finish speaking. She's going to finish her sentence. Nobody is going to interrupt her. So he closes the door again. And then he's like, okay, like you need to go because otherwise I'm going to fuck you in this carriage. And Helen is like, it can be done in a carriage?
Yeah. And he's like, don't make me explain it to you. Okay. So Helen goes home and talks to her twin sisters. Not her twins, their twins, Cassandra and Pandora, who are like very high spirited and 19 and whatever.
The servants are big, like Rhys and Helen stands. Like they're like absolutely.
Oh yeah. Because 100%. And this is I did like this running theme of like older women just like immediately drop of a hat simping for Rhys. Like the housekeeper totally on board. Later on, this like this like
yeah, we have like
sympathetic-
multiple like aristocratic women just being like, oh my god, he's so fucking hot.
or just like older and like middle aged. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the housekeeper's like immediately ready. She like had helped. Helen like snuck out and like made like the housekeeper promised not to tell like her cousin and
You
Kathleen
promised
and
not to
Devin.
tell. Hitler promised not to invade Czechoslovakia, Germany. Welcome to the real world.
Jeremy, welcome to the real world. Okay, so nothing more on the Helen front. We cut to Rhys having lunch with his friend Tom Severin.
No, you forgot. Okay, there's just a little scene before.
What?
He wakes up the next morning with her stocking, the one stocking he didn't burn, on his pillow. He's been sleeping next to it, and then he sniffs it.
Oh my god, that must be nasty.
'Cause
Imagine
he misses
like,
her.
No,
He
but
misses her, and he has a foot fetish.
yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Because it's described as like he woke up and the first thing he saw was a wisp of a dark shadow, and I was like, oh, he's like imagining that she's there, but no, it's the stocking.
He's sleeping with her stocking on his pillow because he's such a simp. I love it so much.
There's just like no way you're gonna tell me that like someone's stockings in this time period would ever smell good for any period of time.
It's the only thing he has.
I know he has a foot. I know he has a
her.
foot. I know, but yeah, I know.
It's the
but,
only
like,
thing he has of her. He
I
loves
know.
her
I'm
so
saying objectively though.
much.
Objectively.
He loves her
Alright.
so much. Listen, here's my thing. Here's what I don't think here's what the disconnect that we're having. I think that you, and I don't know why you're doing this just for this book, because you don't do it for other books. We both understand that there are things that like romance heroes and heroines do that we're like, this is fucking great and so romantic, but like we would never want it to happen in real life.
No. This isn't an actual criticism. I'm saying it must objectively smell bad, but he still likes it because it's hers.
No, I'm just saying in general. Like there's a lot of stuff that Rhys does that if my real life boyfriend did that, I'd be like, no. If Pa ever did a lot of the things that Rhys does to me, I would not tolerate it. But when Rhys does it, I'm just like, oh, you're such a soft boy. Am I winning you over?
No.
Are you coming over to Team Winterbourne?
I'm going to try to be more conscious. No, but I'm going to try to. All right, so Rhys puts us off to have some fried fish with his best bud, Tom Severin. And I've thought about this. I can't figure out why this character is like necessary. Like what exactly does it like show?
He's Cassandra's hero.
Oh, he is. Okay, I was going to say, is he going to get his like anti-sexism redemption arc? All right, thank God. Okay, okay. Because I tried to look it up and I didn't see him.
No,
or maybe I just like misread.
He's
okay.
chasing Cassandra. That's
okay, good. I'm glad it's setting that up. And I mean, I recognize that all the voice sexism like has a purpose. I just don't like hearing it. Like I get it, but like it's just I don't know. It's just like one of my personal like I don't know dislikes. But I'm saying it's like not something that I think needs to like not be in books. I'm just saying it's something that isn't my favorite personally.
It isn't to your taste.
Yes, but you know what is to my taste? The idea of fried fish. Except they talk about how all these like food stands they go to. They're like since one could never be sure how the food had been adulterated, and this just made me remember when people say shit like, "Oh, we shouldn't have an FDA." Or like the FDA is unnecessary, because do people not realize that like there was a time before the FDA when it was just like you could put anything you wanted, you could sell like literal poison as cough medicine to children, and they did, and people died. Like it's not like the government one day was just like, oh, let's have some regulation. Like we're bored today. Like no, it's because like I don't know.
It's because of the what like, is it? There was like early 1900s. It was like the meat packing industry.
That was part of it. Sure.
That was like the foundation of the FDA. That's why the FDA like the foundations of the FDA got created, because there was like this whole meat packing scandal in which they were putting God knows what in sausages. And
I
like
have a whole
whatever
show.
that guy Sinclair, Upton Sinclair, is that him? Was he the one that wrote like the article?
He wrote like that was for labor.
He wrote but he also wrote a book that was with labor and also the horrible like disgusting shit going around in the meatpacking industry. And then Teddy Roosevelt was like, shit, we gotta do something about this.
I'm thinking specifically of the drug that like killed a bunch of people. But I can't find it right now.
Cocaine.
Oh no, that was
in everything.
That was
morphine.
No. It had like a fun name, but like inside it was like poison. I can't find it right now. It was like Dr. Doolittle's like happy go lucky powder. Like, yeah. It's like if you get food poisoning, you're not gonna know exactly what food that's from 99% of the time. So you can't just be like, oh well, people will just like not eat the poisoned food, like, and we'll eventually figure it out. But no.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you were on the fence about this, like
about the FDA,
hop right over. Like
this is a pro FDA podcast.
Yes.
We are not sponsored or in any way endorsed by the FDA.
That's what I think is so funny. Like the library thing, like all these people like I was wearing a mask in that video because I just happened to film it in a like building that requires masks. And all these people are like, oh, I don't want to support libraries if they're going to be requiring masks. And I'm like, I'm not affiliated with the library.
You're
but also
I'm not a library.
No. Or the tax video. People are like, oh, this is probably sponsored. The government just like wants us all to like mess up so that we pay more taxes. I'm like, I did not.
You're like, I am a college student.
You think the IRS is like sponsoring TikToks to like brainwash you? Like what? I almost commented. I refrained, but I almost commented on one of those and was like, this is a conspiracy theory I haven't heard before, but like I kind of love it. Like it's just kind of just so like
the IRS is sponsoring TikTok.
Maybe they might have an official account, but
listen, here's my thing. If the IRS or the US library system or the FDA would like to sponsor us, we are willing.
Oh, for sure.
To make propaganda.
For sure.
Not like across the board we'll do anything, but like we're very flexible. Propaganda that we make in our TikToks.
Pro having an FDA. Pro
libraries.
The IRS making its own tax preparation service.
Or better yet, the IRS just telling you how much you owe, like they do in Australia.
Yeah.
The IRS just sending you a letter and is like, this is how much you owe. If you would like to contest it, let us know. Otherwise, send us a check. Why can't we have that? Other countries do that successfully.
We 100% could. Yeah.
They know how much you owe. It's not like they don't know. They know how much everybody owes. There's no reason why they can't tell us. Why can't you just tell me?
Hey. TurboTax. Into it.
I know.
Okay.
Lobbies.
All right, back to the fish. Tom is trying to like sell Rhys on buying these like this like block of cheap land and building like middle class housing. And Rhys is like
affordable housing.
Yeah, sorry.
Like,
well, yeah, middle class affordable housing. Yeah, but Rhys is like, well, I employ about 1,000 people, and although they were well paid, they still had difficulty finding good quality housing in town. And I'm like, I there's a possibility here. London is 100% slums right now, but I think if they can't find good housing, by definition, they aren't well paid. Like, right? Rhys,
yeah.
You with me here? He's like, I spy my opportunity to make a company town and build some company town houses for my employees.
He provides them with He provides them with free medical care. That's something we find out later. Like he has a doctor on hand for like free medical care.
I would rather just have more wages, I feel like, to go
sure,
get my own
but
doctor.
I think there is to address is most of London just slums at this point. I would argue that yes, it's like Mayfair and then like one street for like middle class people and then like poor people. That's Victorian London. Like the wealth disparity was insane.
Yeah. So they go off to like find the building and like it's being demolished that day and they're like evicting all the people and it's just like the scene of like mass like tragedy of like these people like literally being evicted. And Rhys notices like this one little boy sitting with his like frying pan and chair, like probably waiting for his parents. And then suddenly the building starts collapsing on top of him. So Rhys like plays the hero and covers him with his body, which like great, good for Rhys. But his shoulder gets dislocated.
And then when he wakes up, Tom is like, why the fuck would you save that kid? He was trying to pick your pockets before I got
Which is hilarious. And I was really hoping that the kid would come back as like a little sidekick and like be Rhys's
urchin.
Again, I guess maybe I just have such high expectations for her like cast of characters, for like every character that's introduced to be like relevant.
She's gotta
and
have
developed.
some NPCs.
Yeah, Rachel. I know. But Rhys is in luck because there's a doctor on the scene. Dr. Garrett Gibson.
Lady doctor. She's a lady. The name Garrett may have tricked you, but it is not in fact a boy doctor.
How is it spelled? I was wondering if it was like
Garrett or something.
Okay, so just like the typical way. There could have been a nice little enemies to lovers set up with Severin and Garrett.
I know. I wrote that note. I was like, I kind of wish that like Tom and Garrett Gibson got together.
Right, because Tom Severin is immediately like, you mean nurse? She's like, I'm Dr. Garrett Gibson. And he's like, you mean nurse? And she just like ignores him and is like, spouts out a bunch of like medical terminology about what's wrong with his shoulder. And he's like, you're not a real doctor. We need a real doctor. And she's like, again, spouts medical. She's like, I have a medical degree, like fuck off. And so finally he's forced to like take off his necktie to aid in like setting Rhys's shoulder. And then so they help him get to her practice, which is like close by. It's at her dad's house. And they like set the shoulder.
Rhys needs 2 whiskeys to like because he's Welsh.
Yeah.
And he's a bear. He's a bear of a man. How to survive a bear attack in this case? You don't. You let Rhys have you.
So
wait, we got to come up with a rhyme with that. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lie down. If it's white, good night. If it's Rhys,
hug and peace, kiss and
make
peace.
your peace.
Fuck and peace.
Peace.
For the record, not all black bears are black and not all grizzlies are brown. But all polar bears, to my knowledge, are white. So not that that'll help you much, but unless it's a pizzly bear or a growler bear.
What the fuck is a paisley bear?
Especially now that polar bears are like moving more southern and like, global warming.
Yeah.
They can interbreed with grizzlies. And that's what you get.
Oh my God, that's like
a growler or a pizzly bear.
I like growler much better. A piss bear. What? Why would you do that? I know, but it sounds like piss. A pissly bear. Yeah, that's funny. What it sounds like.
It's funny.
A piss bear. I just feel like it would naturally, like, if you were like, don't like be wary of the piss bears, I wouldn't take it seriously. And I feel like there's like the most dangerous bear has got to be like polar bear meets grizzly.
But unless you're in like the upper right corner of the US, it's a black bear. So you should fight. Oh, sorry, left corner, not right corner. It's not. They're not in Maine. They're in Washington and Alaska. Somehow, I forget how, but Garrett Gibson is like, my practice is going to be ending by the end of this month because I don't have enough like clients or patients. And Rhys is like, he doesn't immediately try to like save her, but he's like, he asks her for like all her credentials. And then he's like, well, actually, I was meaning to hire like a second doctor. Go talk to like my head doctor. And if he wants to hire you, you have the job.
Because Rhys doesn't care about gender. He just cares about competence.
It's true.
One more thing. Rhys goes back to his store and he gets his lawyer to come and basically just redos his will so that Helen gets everything.
Because, I mean, it's true. Like, he's like, I left her in this incredibly vulnerable position. Like, Anthony Bridgerton would be like, see, most people don't confront their immortality.
Yeah. So Rhys is basically just like, I love Helen and I could have died today and I want her to be super rich even if I do die. So he calls the solicitor and the solicitor, like, Rhys is basically just like, Helen and I fucked, so I want to like include her in my will. And the solicitor's like, so when you get married, she gets it. And Rhys is like, no, she gets it anyway. And then he's like, if she has your child, she gets it. And Rhys is like, no, she gets everything. And then Rhys is like, listen, if she has a kid, the kid gets everything. If she doesn't have a kid, she gets everything. Either way, Helen's getting everything. And like, if there's a kid, she still gets 5 million pounds, which is insane.
It is insane.
In the Victorian era? Like, Helen's like Jeffrey Bezos rich at that point. Like, 5 million pounds in like 1870?
Yeah.
What?
Good for her.
Rhys.
I just want her to like kill Rhys and like pop off.
No.
Anyway.
Listen, that's what I was thinking at this point. I was like, it's really nice of Rhys to give Helen the store, but like Helen would definitely not be able to, like, Helen's competent, but like she ain't a business one. She would not be running the store.
Well, someone else would probably run it. Like, the same as he was saying that his mom was like, so he's just gonna totally like screw over his mom too. Cause he's like talking about all these other people who are currently in his will, including like his mom and a bunch of other like relatives. And like, what, they're just not gonna get anything? Like, he's like, yeah, my mom.
No, I think the implication is like, it was mostly like, he was like, I was planning to leave the store to my board of governors.
Oh yeah, well, but his mom was gonna get money from him, but not be able to like run it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is I think the people who were like the family members and the friends who were gonna get stuff and like the loyal employees, like they still get stuff, but everything else goes to Helen.
Yeah. Anyway, back at the ranch, Helen is just sitting there like I don't know what, biting her nails, and like, because Rhys has promised to come and talk to her cousin Devin, who has now returned with Kathleen from their basically elopement, like they're married now.
This is where I made my note about your Mary video, because Helen realizes that the reason they eloped was because Kathleen's pregnant, and Helen's like a little embarrassed knowing that they had sex.
Yeah.
So it's like literally explicitly the Mary video.
Well, it is. Well, except in the Mary video, I never really feel that way about other people. Like, I don't like see someone who's pregnant and think like, oh, it's a little embarrassing. Like, I know you had sex. I exclusively feel that way when I think about myself. So like, that was definitely some confusion in the comments. Like, I'm not sitting here, like, I would admit to it if part of my brain was thinking that about other people, but like for some reason it's like it's solely egotistical.
Yeah. That's always how it is. You're like, I wouldn't care if another person did that, but like, God, if I do it, I assume that like people are gonna burn me at the stake.
Right, exactly. Which probably just proves that like no one else is thinking that about me. So really, I mean, it's been illogical from the get-go, but like it's extra illogical. Exactly what Helen says. It's like, you don't just unlearn that now that it's like allowed. So
Rhys arrives.
Yes.
He goes to talk with Devin, and Devin's like, you threatened my fucking wife. We're not friends, but I'll go talk to you.
Meanwhile, Kathleen and Helen are like talking upstairs, and Helen like spills the beans, and Kathleen's like, wait, Rhys cannot tell Devin that you guys like fucked. Like that's not and she's like, we have to go stop it. And Helen's like, how do you know he didn't already tell him? And Kathleen is like, we would have heard things breaking. And then like 2 seconds later, we hear like a bellow like breaking shit. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, oh fuck, and they go.
Okay, so Helen and Kathleen come in just in time to see Devin like push Rhys. And
no, remember, like lay him out. He like punched.
Yeah, like push him into a wall. Rhys has a dislocated shoulder, so like this hurts him a lot more than it already would. And Helen like immediately like runs to him, and like he pushed his head against the caress like an affectionate wolf.
Yes. And then Helen makes Rhys get medical care. Rhys is like, fine. Like, I'm fine. And Helen's like, absolutely not. We're taking a look at your shoulder. And like women making big, strong men get medical care is like my kink. Like I really like
Dr.
that
Garrett Gibson. Yeah. So basically Devin's pissed, but it's all agreed. Like Helen has to marry Rhys.
Someone calls Helen ruined. Helen's like, you've been ruined. Like,
oh yeah, they say it all the time. They all say it.
And then but then Rhys is like, but like Rhys specifically is like, you're not ruined. You're perfect. I'm like, you're perfect, Rhys.
Yeah. I feel like ruin is one of those words that like I've heard so much that I like don't associate it with its literal meaning. But if you think about it too much, it's like, oh, it's not very nice.
No, it's definitely like lost its impact. Like, because I just
it never had the impact to begin with. Like I never like thought that initially. I only like realized it after, but the initial, whatever. So basically Garrett Gibson is getting hired despite the fact that the doctor doesn't want to because, quote, I fought enough battles in my lifetime. I have no desire to take part in women's struggles against injustice. Just more of the, whatever.
I'm just like, eat shit.
And this is the point at which Helen is just like pining for Rhys, and I really wanted her to I wanted them both to just like figure out how to masturbate at this point because I was like, just get over it. Like, come on. So it would have been great for Helen. That would have been so empowering. Like, that would have been a great step for Helen. I feel like
we don't get masturbation scenes nearly as often as we should.
No. Well, this would have been such a tonic to like her. Like just her entire experience being like, only with Rhys.
You know what I also love? So like there's like the solo masturbation scene when you have like one of the people like thinking about the other person and like masturbating and it's like super hot. But then you have like the mutual masturbation scenes where they're just like watching each other while they both masturbate. And I feel like that's like you almost never see that. But I'm like, I see what happened here and I like it.
So Devin has decided that it's time for them all, the family being Helen, her sisters, and his wife, to go back to their country estate.
Because they just like found basically like super rare minerals in the earth and they have to like that's the family fortune. They're like, we need to go back and like handle all of that.
Yeah. Rhys comes to say goodbye to Helen at the train. She has like she has like written him a few letters, and like in the last one she was like, are you sure you actually like, she just keeps being like, oh, are you sure you actually like me? Like, do you like the classic, like, and he comes to be like, yeah, I fucking do.
It's like, oh, I wrote down this quote. Okay, so he comes to say goodbye and she's like cold on the train platform and he wraps her in his coat and she snuggles into him like a small woodland creature nestling in its burrow.
She's always a small, like, baby creature. I don't know.
She's
like,
small and he's large.
She's an adult woman.
It's a small, large trope. I love it. And so, so he comes to say goodbye because he's not coming to them. And then he gives her a letter and he's like, read it when you're on the train. And then she reads the letter when on the train. And the whole letter is fucking gold. But I won't read the whole letter. But I will read this part where he's like, you've stolen my very breath, Cariad. And now I'm left to count the days until I steal it back from you, kiss by kiss. Oh boy. Rhys Winterborne at it again.
Okay. So Helen has nothing to do but like putz around the like mansion, and one of her projects, so the orchids that she has, they belong to her mother, who was like not a very good mother at all. She's very absent, but like Helen still is like such a like, I don't even know, like people pleaser. Like she takes care of the orchids.
Yeah. It's specifically stated, this is something that's stated later on where Helen's like, I was made to feel that like love, basically that like love was very conditional. And Helen was like, because she does it when she meets her half sister Charity later on. She's like, Charity's like very good at like being calm in distressing situations, and like I was always praised for that as a kid too, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. So like, yeah, Helen like recognizes, she's like,
for sure
the way I was raised is like was not healthy.
So so another one of her projects is like organizing her mom's old journals. And she's read a lot of shit things that her mom wrote in there and about her dad and like her mom. She's like, little Helen has been a great help with the twins. I own I like her more than I once did, although she'll always be a pale rabbit-faced creature. And then she talks about how like after the twins were born, like her husband was just like, thank you for producing 2 more parasites. I'm like, how would younger sons not also be parasites? Like, yeah, I get you want like a backup, but like they're just as much, if not more, because like you can't even.
The
I don't know.
Ravenel parents were just absolute shit. That's
Yeah, they
basically
were.
what you need to know.
Yeah. And we find out that like when Helen's dad was dying, his son wasn't there. Like no one else basically cared about him except for Helen. She like was sitting by his deathbed and he was like, I don't want you. I want one of my children. And she's like, thinks he doesn't recognize her. She's like, I am your child. I'm your daughter. And he's like, you're not my daughter. Like your
You're
mom.
a bastard, like
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Basically. And the butler who like overhears it tries to tell her like it's
No,
not
his
true.
valet, his like
Yeah.
loyal
Yeah.
valet,
Yeah.
who now
Yeah.
works for Rhys.
Yeah. Who's he's a homie. He's like, don't believe him. But Helen's like, I know it's fucking true. Like, and she's like, that explains why my parents like hated me, why my brother for the most part was distant, why I don't look like any of them.
And I just think it's so like, and Helen does, she writes to her brother, but her brother can't come home in time. And then she like gets Pandora and Cassandra to come in to like sit with the dad. But they're both like, they're like little kids. And they're like,
no, they're like,
I
he
don't
didn't
like,
care about us. Why would we care about
yeah,
him?
they're like, we don't like him. And also we're like 12. So like, we're not going to sit in this sad
I think it's
room
mainly
watching
that
this
they don't
man
like him.
die. Yeah, but it's, I don't know. It's also like, I think just because they're young, like they're just like, they don't have the patience for it. They don't have the patience to like pretend to be sad about a guy that they don't give a shit about. And so it's still like at the end of the day, it's just like Helen.
But Helen has known all this for a while. But this time she finds another like half-written letter from her mom. And it's to this guy called Albion. And it says, like, come back to me and I swear I will send the baby away. Like, if you don't come back to me, Helen will never be loved by her own mother. And then she's like, come back and I'll send the baby away. And I'm like, all right, so it seems like Helen is like shit out of luck no matter what. And she's basically like begging him to come back, but she obviously never sent the letter. So Helen, she didn't want to find this out, but she now knows that her dad's first name is Albion.
And then she burns the letter like a fucking badass. Which I didn't notice the first time.
I
This
didn't
time was like,
didn't notice it the second time.
She just like takes it, she throws it into the fire, and then she just watches it. And the line is something like she watched until all the words were burned away or like were turned to ash. And I was like, what? Like a random metal moment. Like for like I can just imagine like the camera slowly panning into her face, like as the flames are like flickering on her face and she's like staring into the fire.
Sure. So then she goes downstairs and Rhys is like totally sucking up to the family. I love it. Like he's just like endearing himself to them through food. He sends them like all these like fun little like I love the description was great here. It was like bottles of jewel colored liqueur meant to be sipped from tiny glasses and these like almonds that Kathleen is like craving. Like she's pregnant, so she's like cravings, and she just like she just destroys the entire thing. And then Rhys ends up sending like his entire stock of them to her, just like, specifically to suck up.
But so Kathleen finds out that her shitty dad has died. And so she and Devin have to go to Ireland to like bury him. And so they're like, Rhys, can you come here to like be with the family during this hard time? And Rhys is like, finally. Like, oh man. Like Rhys is like, thank God that they invited me because otherwise I would have had to like just storm the fucking castle.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So he rocks up and we find out from Devin telling Rhys like that Helen has been spending her free time like trying to learn Welsh.
And learning about Welsh, like Rhys is like, has she mentioned me at all? And Devin is like, dude, she never stops talking about you.
We thought she had like a disease because she was hacking and spitting so much, but it turns out she was just like practicing her pronunciation.
And he's like, she won't stop giving us fun facts about Welsh history. Like, it's so fucking
King
annoying.
Arthur was Welsh.
Yeah, and I just like, yeah, like he learned about orchids and she learned about Welsh. Like they care about each other's interests and like they're just so obsessed with each other. And then Devin is like, she's in the greenhouse because you brought Kathleen a shit ton of almonds. I will allow you. I will pretend that I do not know where you two are for the next half hour. So like Rhys runs to the greenhouse and then they just have like a cute little like they're just like both like two like teenagers like running towards each other like tripping and stumbling into an embrace and it's just very cute.
Yeah.
Rhys is also compared to a wolf again at this point. I won't bring it up every time like the cat quotes, but just know that Rhys is a wolf.
I wrote down all the wolf. Yeah. And this is where we get the first hint of like anti-Welsh sentiment. Like Rhys is like talking about how his mom would tell him avoid speaking in Welsh as you would sin. And so, yeah, like that's going to be important. Welsh hate. Oh, yeah. No. I'm going to say this quote. He's like, oh, Helen, we've been apart. Now you have me like a dog on a leash begging for more. She's like, I see no dog on a leash, only a very large wolf.
I love it. Yeah, so then we find out that Rhys is in a fight with Tom Severin because, so this was established earlier, like Rhys was like, I want to know who owns that building before like I buy the land. He sends his private investigators out and he finds out that the owner of the land is a Mr. Vance, who is his mortal enemy and also just a general dick. Like nobody seems to like, everyone has a bad story about Mr. Vance. And then he's like, I will give up. Like they're like, isn't that kind of harsh to like end your friendship with Tom just because of this one thing? And Rhys says, I'll give up anyone or anything with any connection to Albion Vance. And Helen is like, shit. She's like, that is 100% my dad.
She's been like knitting this whole, or like not knitting, like sewing. So she intentionally cuts her finger on like her scissors and she's like, oh no, I have to go get a Band-Aid, and like runs down to the servants'
But Rhys
quarters.
is so adorably concerned when she cuts herself. He's like, I'll take you. He's like about to like carry her like down. He's like, so she doesn't like injure herself further.
Yeah. And she goes down to talk to that valet who, remember, like knows about her parentage and now works for Rhys, Quincy. And Quincy's great. He apparently was like a, paternal figure to her.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. She gets the truth about her father from her like only actual father figure.
Quincy at first is like, she's like, sit down with me. And he's like, no, wouldn't be proper. But then as soon as she says like, I need to know who he is, he's like, oh, okay, I got to sit down for this one. And we find out like, yes, it was Albion Vance.
And Vance is like super racist against Welsh people. Like he basically thinks like all Welsh people should like they're like, if there were a Welsh genocide, like Albion Vance would be leading.
He's been the one campaigning to like outlaw the Welsh language. He's like, they're not even fit to be servants. Like, yeah, real full on. So yeah, so basically Helen now knows, and she's like, well, I have to tell Rhys, like he hates this guy. And Quincy is like, don't fucking do that. Like, how much like like when he, his good opinion once lost is lost forever. Like
people are constantly telling Helen this.
Yeah.
Helen's like, I have to tell Rhys the truth.
I like that. Because otherwise I would be like, this is fucking stupid, tell him. But like she's constantly getting guidance from like, older and wiser people to not tell him. Yeah. So
like people she respects, especially.
Right, exactly.
Like, adults that are like parental figures in her life are telling her like, don't tell him. So she's like, I don't know what to do. And also she has a whole like, she's like, I am in love with, she realizes very early on, I think it's like in the next scene, Helen's like, oh, I'm in love with him. So she's also like, I don't want to lose it. Like, I'm in love with this guy. And I know like the moment I tell him about this, he is like not going to want to be with me anymore. So like, I don't, that's hard. Like, I don't want to like lose him. That's going to be very painful.
Yeah. So that night they have their little like rendezvous, and we get the full backstory from Rhys about why besides the whole like Welsh like racism, he also has a personal reason to hate him. So one of Rhys's like, this starts because Helen's like, oh, have you ever like wanted to marry anyone before? And he's like, yeah, there was this girl, Peggy. Like I had a huge crush on her, but I never made any moves because my best friend, Ian, I don't know, Jan.
Eon,
yeah. Also was like into her, and they ended up getting married. But like he also like worked with me, and after he got married, he didn't like stop working. He was like super rich, but he didn't stop working at all. He just like was never home, and his wife like cheated on him and ended up getting pregnant, and she like told him, and like they ended up reconciling, and he was like, I'll raise the child as my own. Like, I'm sorry for.
Who was the biological father?
Well,
Rachel?
I was the big. I have my storytelling method here.
I'm sorry.
So she has the baby, but the labor ends up going really long, and they give her like whatever, like laudanum or something.
She dies in childbirth.
She has an allergy. She dies in childbirth. His friend like goes insane for the next 3 days. He's like talking to people who aren't there, like just total mad with grief. He ends up dying by suicide. So Rhys has now lost both his like first love and his best friend. And who's the man who's behind all of this? Albion Vance. And are Jon and Peggy, are they Welsh, or are they friends that Rhys met in
I think
London?
They're Welsh.
I think that was especially ironic.
Owen, yeah. Oh, I've totally fucking I'm pretty sure it's spelled Ewan, so I'm just gonna say Ewan.
But it's like Jon with like a very slight E in the beginning, like
Ewan or something, whatever.
Yeah,
I think he and Rhys were like childhood friends, and then like Peggy was also like, Ewan is definitely. I'm not sure whether Peggy's Welsh, but Ewan definitely was.
Yeah. So Helen is like, well, what happened to the baby? And Rhys is like, oh, well, Peggy's family didn't want her in light of the circumstances. And I'm like, what circumstances? It's your biological grandchild. And also they were planning to raise it as their own. Like, come on. They're like, they sent her back to her natural father. And she's like, do you know what happened to her? And Rhys is basically like, don't know, don't care. Any child of his is devil spawn. Like,
yeah, Rhys is really digging. Poor Rhys, like unbeknownst to himself, like is just digging himself into a hole. And Helen is like, one of the reasons she's so scared to tell Rhys is because she has this whole complex, like we said, from like growing up. She believes she has to like be perfect. She like thinks that like love is conditional and she has to like earn people's love. And so like she thinks that like as soon as she doesn't live up to this like perfect ideal of Rhys, because also another thing is she's supposed to like socially elevate him because she's like a member of the aristocracy and he'll like he's like technically working class. And she's like, if I can't do that for him anymore, like he's not gonna love me. And so it's like it's part of her like learning, oh, like Rhys's love is not conditional. Like actual love is like not, it doesn't depend on like being perfect. And the reason, like while Rhys is telling her all this, he's like, Helen's like, oh, tell me about your past or whatever. And he's like, what the fuck? Like she makes me feel like I can open up and be emotionally vulnerable and like I want to like tell her the truth about things and like be honest and open with her. Like, what is happening here? I don't understand. He's like, what is this feeling of like wanting to have healthily processed emotions? I don't get it. I feel safe.
Yeah.
Oh, she also at this point, because they've had multiple rounds of sex at this point, she also like gives him a hand job. She drapes her naked body across him like a cat during this, just so you know. They also fuck in different positions. I just want to say, like, I appreciate Lisa Kleypas in general because I feel like she's like very good at like, I feel like she's very good about like giving us different positions. Like, no missionary all the time for Lisa. Like, she's like doing it on the side. She's doing it like reverse cowgirl. She's doing it cowgirl. She's doing it missionary. Like, she's doing it in carriage. She's doing it everywhere.
In a greenhouse, which I feel like is just its own category.
Yeah. Sometimes I really have to like when I'm reading a Lisa Kleypas sex scene, sometimes I just have to like put the book down and like
get the
mentally figure out like what they're I was like,
oh yeah,
I know this sounds possible, but like I just have to take a moment to like visually picture what's going on because like she's just like, and like her thigh was like up here and like
I'm gonna be honest, I do that a lot, not just with her books. Like I like this is a frequent occurrence where I have like one image in my mind and then something like is said that completely contradicts it and I have to like completely go back and like reimagine. Okay, so it's time to meet Lady Barrick, who is basically Kathleen's like surrogate mother who basically raised her. And she is basically, I would describe her as like a sympathetic mix of Mrs. Bennet and Lady Catherine from Pride and Prejudice. Like that's how she's like very much like pragmatic. You need to get married. Like my opinion is law, but also just like likable.
Yeah. And she comes in, she low-key roasts them all. She's come to like be a chaperone. She comes in, she low-key like roasts every single one of them. And then she like asks Rhys, she meets Rhys, obviously immediately is like, holy shit, this man is so toasty. And she's like, she asks Rhys if he thinks Helen is marrying below herself. And Rhys is like, well, first of all men marry below themselves. And then he's like, second of all, Helen is so much better than anyone else that like it might as well be me. Like she's never gonna meet someone as good as her, so like why not me? And I'm like, I love you.
So a very minor character that we haven't talked about is Devon's brother West, who's just like bopping around here. He's just like a jolly rake who's like friends with them all, like kind of like a brother.
He runs the estate,
but he went to the train station to get Lady Barrick, and it's implied that like they kind of like do not get along. They have a tiff, and this is like an ongoing thing throughout the rest of the book. And I'm gonna be honest, like enemies to lovers between Lady Barrick and Wes. I'm here for that. I know it's not going to happen, but like, come on.
There's a lot of enemies to lovers that I wish happened that are set up in this book that don't actually happen.
Or like the reason that Lady Barrick is like so gone for Rhys is because she starts like reminiscing about this other Welshman that she had a crush on back in the day. The one who got away. Oh, it was a footman, the one who got away. And I just want him to come back on this. Is her husband still alive at this point? He must be. Yeah, he must be.
But she says specifically, like Rhys leaves and Lady Barrick is like, I remember this really hot Welsh footman that I had a crush on as a kid. And then she says, there is no greater enemy of virtue than a charming Welshman.
Oh my God. Give me that love story. And here's the thing is that, so Lady Barrick is connected to Albion Vance. He is her husband's nephew. And it's again, like a Pride and Prejudice situation, right? Where he's the one who's going to inherit. So they have to be nice to him because he can like turn her out of the house at any time. What I want is like that comes around, but she's fine because she's got her Welshman, right? Like her husband dies, she gets the Welshman. And Albion Vance can go fuck off.
Yeah, and they're talking about how Rhys has a department store and Lady Berrick is like, oh, I would never go to a department store, like not having things that are made exclusively for you. And I'm like, you know, I get that department stores were revolutionary and that they like made clothing more accessible to like the masses. And like 1870s department stores were a lot different than like fast fashion department stores now. But I'm like, I do like miss the days when you like had something that like fit you perfectly.
Yeah, Helen is like, it would be so weird to have your clothes made by someone you don't know. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm like, I understand that it's not practical because then you can only have like three clothes, like
Yeah.
outfits realistically. But I'm also like, oh, to have clothes that like fit me, like that were like made for me. So Helen just before they're gonna go back to London.
Yeah.
Right. And Lady Berrick is gonna like live in their house and like chaperone them. But before they leave, West pulls Helen aside and is like, girl, you know he would have married you anyway. Like you didn't have to sleep with him.
Yeah.
She's like, Rhys, like, he scammed you a little bit. And Helen's like, nah. And West is like, he did. Like it worked out. It's gonna work out in the end, but like you didn't have to sleep with him.
Yeah. Also, something I appreciate is Pandora and Cassandra have like a conversation that basically reveals that they like also know nothing about sex. And Helen is like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to fill them in. I appreciate that. Like, girl. Because I remember the first time she sees them after sleeping with Rhys, I'm like, why don't you tell them right fucking now, girl? Like, stop that. Because they're just like, there's also, we skipped over the scene where they all play a board game and like there's a whole discussion about like censoring the books that Pandora and Cassandra can read. I'm just like, come on, get out of here. A little more silence and a little less voicing on the like overt sexism.
They're like, we keep it on like the 6th shelf because
Yeah.
Kathleen is short and she can't like see that high.
Like, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And that the board game thing also sets up like Pandora's whole thing is she wants to like invent a board game and sell it and like be a little business lady. So like basically she wants to invent like Monopoly, which was created by a woman, by the way, and then stolen by a man. Yeah. So surprise, surprise.
But Lady Berrick is out here being like, there's no happiness for anyone who does not dwell within the broad zone of average. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, Lady Berrick is like this really interesting contradiction of both like absolutely wild, but like also like propriety central.
Right. Okay, so back to London. And even though like Rhys was literally like, Helen, like Lady Berrick seems chill, but like I don't like her connections to Albion Vance. And I feel like, I don't know, I guess he didn't say it to Lady Berrick, but like I feel like it's implied. What happens the very next day?
No, but wait, you're skipping over the matrons. They're having like, they're back in London and Lady Berrick has all her like her like matron friends over for tea. And then like, they're like, oh, so Helen, you're engaged to Rhys Winterborne. That's really cool. And then Lady Berrick is like, Helen, why don't you and your sisters like go upstairs for now? And then they like eavesdrop at the door, and there's just like a whole like page of the ladies being like, oh my god, he's so fucking hot. Oh my god. Like, and they're like, Lady Berrick, tell us all about him. And they're just like gossiping in the corner. And I love the continued, like everybody immediately sees Rhys and they're like, oh, I just creamed
That's true. I didn't even connect that it was like an entire group of them. Like,
yes. They're all like, oh my god, tell us all about Rhys.
Oh my god. Okay. So next morning, Helen comes downstairs and Lady Berrick is like, you have a visitor. It's like kind of ominous, but Helen is just like thrown into the room. Who's sitting there? Mr. Snake Man, Albion Vance. Something about the name Albion is just like so.
It's very Slytherin-y.
Yeah. And he's basically there and
basically he's like, I want money and I'm blackmailing you into getting Rhys to donate money to my charity that I embezzle from.
Yeah, or else I'll tell him that you're related to me.
And Helen, to her credit, is like, in her head, she's like, absolutely not.
Yeah, Mrs. Berrick is like Mrs. Berrick is like, oh, I didn't think, like, I knew that he was your dad, but I didn't think you knew until I saw your face. Probably going to try to blackmail you. And Helen's like, well, I have to say no. And Lady Berrick is like, girl, I've been blackmailed by him since like the first day I married my husband. Like, sorry, you're just going to have to like get in line.
And but Lady Berrick, this is another situation in which Lady Berrick is really like straightforward about how shitty women have it. She's like, listen, like, I'm literally going to be homeless if my husband dies, like, before I do. Like, I will be homeless.
Why can't she live with one of her daughters? She's 2 daughters.
Yeah, well, that in the back of my head, I was like, I don't know, Lady Berrick. You have like Kathleen and Devin, and you have like Helen, like someone would definitely take you in. But like the reality before she met them, the reality of the situation is that she has nowhere to live, basically.
And that's what I was saying. She's like a sympathetically painted mix of Mrs. Bennet and Lady Catherine, I feel like. Okay, so But so during their like deal, which happens at the museum the next day, whatever.
Yeah, they go to like museum and watch a bunch of stuffed like animals, and it's like
Ew, and
ominous,
touch
you
the
know, like
taxidermy giraffe.
taxidermy. Yeah, they're all like Lady Barrack, like Pandora's like, oh, I want to touch the giraffe to see what it feels like. And so she does, and then she runs away, and Lady Barrack like looks around and is just like,
yeah,
like touches it and was like, don't tell anyone.
Yeah. So Helen is like, I remember the lesson that Rhys taught me that like you should always ask for a concession in a bargain. And she's like, all right, I'll like, I mean, she's lying, but she's like, I'll let you blackmail me if like tell me where you sent your other illegitimate daughter, that Peggy's daughter. Where is she? And she weasels the name. He's like, oh, I sent her to this like woman to take care of her, and I sent her money.
But before that, like this whole interaction, Helen is just like stone cold and like she just like laughs straight in his face at like his audacity. She's like, you don't fucking scare me.
He's like, yeah, you owe me. I gave you the gift of life. And she's like, oh, you mean a well-timed spasm of the loins? But she got from Kathleen. I enjoyed that.
No, from Lady Barrack.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, oh, like Helen is just again, this is another just moment. It's like the fire when she burns the letter of this, just like her, just like really metal moment of like I swear to God, like she's gonna like cut her palm and like make a blood oath next. Like Helen's just like wildin'.
Oh my God. So okay, so she writes a letter to the lady who she thinks has her sister. Okay. In the meantime, she goes to the store.
They have a private shopping trip at Winterbourne's.
And Rhys is like, I've been doing consumer research, and like I knew I would suck up to her if I mentioned the gloves, because that's where all the ladies of her age go as soon as they get to the store. Helen has a migraine. Rhys takes her to Dr. Garrett Gibson. That's how her and Helen meet.
And Dr. Garrett Gibson gives her this magical migraine cure. It's like powder that makes her migraine go away in like 5 minutes.
It's probably heroin, I'm like, Allison. Like,
I know, but I was like reading the scene. I was like, where can I get my I mean, it's definitely heroin because like Helen gets a little bit high afterward. Yeah. Like she gets a little bit loopy. But I was like, oh, I want this. It's like, how come my prescription medication does not have the same effect as this 1870s magical migraine cure?
Heroin.
We're like, where can I get access to? It's a powder though, so it could also be cocaine. Like, you never know.
Yeah. Okay, so then after that, he takes her to his connected house, to the greenhouse, which he built as a surprise for her,
so she could bring all 200 of her orchids. Because at the beginning, when they first had sex, she was like, I don't bring much to our marriage other than 200 orchids. And he's like, you want to bring all of them? And she's like, well, I know it's probably not possible to bring them all to London. And he's like, I'll make it happen. And he did. He built her like a custom greenhouse on the top of his house in London, and it's so cute. He's just walking around, he's like nervous and like telling her about all the technology. He's like, yes, and they're pre-pressed glass frames and like hydraulically tested steel beam. And then Helen just turns around and like kisses him, and then they have like a hot fuck, and he calls her heart of my heart, and it's just so gentle and beautiful. And they tell each other they love her. Also, this whole time Rhys has been like, you seem stressed. Are you sure there isn't anything you want to tell me? And Helen's like, no, definitely not. And like, you're like, okay, so Rhys knows like that something's going on with Vance.
Something I appreciate is that he gives her a handkerchief to like mop up the cum drip after they.
Yeah, after he just like tucks it in there.
Yeah, because that's something I'm always thinking about. I'm like, that's nasty. Like, you're not even wearing underwear. Like, the next day, Helen gets a response from the lady that she wrote to for her sister, and the lady's like, yeah, he sent her here, but like a few years ago he basically just like stopped paying, and I asked him for more money but I never got a response, so like I'm poor too, I had no choice, I had to send her to an orphanage. Also, her name is Charity Wednesday. I named her Charity to remind her that she's only has a house because of the charity of others.
Yeah,
like the charity of others, or her dad's like legal obligation to pay for her. But whatever.
And then Wednesday, this is where I got that fun fact, Rachel, that orphans in the Victorian era, if you have a last name that's a day of the week, it's very, very likely that your ancestors were orphans.
Nice.
Because they named you after the day of the week that you came to
I didn't put that
orphanage.
Together with this. Yeah.
That's where I got this from.
Nice.
And I looked it up. I fact checked it. It's like a real thing.
So Helen's like, all right, well, I have to go like scoop my sister.
She's like, time for a rescue mission.
Yeah. She's like, who can help me with this? But that badass bitch I met last night, Dr. Garrett Gibson. And so she makes up a story about why she needs to go see Dr. Garrett Gibson to Lady Barrack. She's like, oh, well, I have symptoms. And Lady Barrack is like, if you think that because you had sex last night in the department store, you would know you're pregnant, like you're crazy. Which thank you, Lady Barrick. She's like, that's not how it works. Thank you, because there are definitely books that like it's like the next morning
day she's like, I'm pregnant.
Basically, the Lady Barrick like finds out it's a woman doctor, and she's like, one cannot trust a woman with a matter as important as childbirth.
and then she's like, I have to go. She's like, Dr. Garrett can't come here. I have to go to her house because that's where she keeps all her supplies. And like she has like a lamp
special
and like
light,
stuff to like look at it. And Lady Barrick is like, a male doctor would have the decency to close his eyes during the examination. And I'm like, no wonder so many women died in childbirth.
I literally wrote the quote and then LOL, no wonder.
I was like, oh, okay, that explains a lot. Okay.
Oh my God. Okay, so she goes to Dr. Garrett Gibson, who immediately is a total homie. She's totally down to help.
And she has her walking cane that she practices like fencing with.
Yeah, which I choose to believe it's not so much fencing as like Krav Maga or like something like totally badass. So they show up and of course they walk right in. And the first like scraggly child they meet, because of course it wouldn't do to see all the other children in like horrible conditions. We're only going to care about the one.
No, they do show the other children. They go out. They're all like eating dinner in a room, and then like a lot of the younger kids run up, and the like matron of the orphanage is like, oh, it's so annoying. Like most of the young kids still think that their moms are going to come back for them, so they always get like excited when a person comes, and I'm like, that is the saddest line ever.
She's like, oh, well, it's because a lot of the moms did used to come back, but we put a stop to that. They were just like using us as free babysitting, basically. So we made it really hard to admit and get kids out. Which honestly, motivation's not the best. However, like at least they're making at least a half-assed effort to prevent like kidnapping and like human trafficking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
she is like, to be fair to the matron, she is like, it's really fucking annoying because it makes more work for us. Like I wish they hadn't done it.
Yeah.
So she's not like annoyed with it because she recognizes that's fucked up, but like, you know, she's not pro it. But so she sends all the hopeful children to scatter, and the only child left is a little girl with light blonde hair. I don't think we ever mentioned Helen has very light blonde hair and dark eyebrows and dark lashes. It's like a very unique appearance. And this child looks exactly like her.
She has an Alice Cullen cut, like random lengths.
And she's like, Mama! And Helen's like, well, I'm definitely not your mom, but I definitely am your half-sister.
Yeah, and the matron's like, get off of her, Charity.
Yeah, she's like, you belong to me. You belong to someone. And she like identifies. She's like, I didn't feel like I ever belonged to anyone until Rhys.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, this is like, as I spent like, I definitely like used to think in my head like, disaster scenario of like, what if our parents died and I had to be like the guardian? So don't worry, had it planned out. Just gonna pull a Nani from Lilo and Stitch.
Oh my God.
This is what Helen's doing.
Yeah, normally I don't really like children in romance. I think this is a pretty common opinion. Like I don't think I'm unique in thinking this, because like a lot of the times children are just like annoying. Yeah. They just like take away from like the romance, and they're just like, a lot of people just don't know how to write children as well. It's just like, yeah. But all of Charity's scenes, I was like, she is the fucking cutest. And every time she appears, it's to show us something about another character. Like we learn about like the characters we actually give a shit about.
And so Helen, they managed to get her out of the orphanage by claiming she has like scarlet fever.
They scam.
Helen's like, I feel grief because I definitely lost Rhys at this point, and a faint lonely note of joy. But she's like, but there will never be anyone else like Rhys. Like I know it's like worth it, but she's sad.
Yeah.
So they're walking back, and the orphanage is in like a really shady part of town, and they're like harassed by like two men who try to grab Helen, but Garrett Gibson is like over it. She takes one down. She's about to take the other one down when a random other man shows up and like takes him down before she can get to him. And she's like really pissed. Garrett Gibson is like really pissed because she's like, she's like, thank you, but we didn't need your help. Like, and Helen's like, we're so grateful. And she's like, gratitude is for when you needed help. We didn't need help.
Yeah.
But they don't know who he is, and he won't identify himself. And he's just like, all right, well, if you won't let me like get you a cab, I'll just follow you at a distance, like to make sure you're
they
okay.
Turn around, and like Dr. Garrett Gibson is like, oh, he's like walking 100 feet behind us. And Helen's like, oh, that's so nice. Dr. Gibson is like, no, it's not.
Yeah, which objectively it's not. But yeah.
No. Definitely creepy. Like even if a man had just saved me from assault, and if he followed me afterward, I'd be like,
But again, it's only saving if you needed hell.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing to do, I guess. Either way. So they get home. Lady Barrick is furious. Pandora and Cassandra don't ask any questions. They're just like, how can we help? And they like take Charity and like try to give her a bath. But Charity is like so traumatized. She like doesn't
By
like
the
water.
nuns, which I
Fucking
identify
nuns,
with.
which I looked up. There are Anglican nuns. There are only about 2,000 total nuns and monks left today, but they exist.
But yeah, I hard relate to being traumatized at the age of 4 by a nun.
Oh, remember how we were roasting Carlisle for Edward for describing Carlisle as an Anglican pastor?
Yeah.
Okay, so later in this
dad
book,
is an Anglican pastor.
right? But pastor, we were like the word pastor, and later on they're talking about a pastor at a local church, and I was like, wait a second, they called him a pastor. So I looked it up, which maybe we should have done before, but apparently the Anglicans are like very fluid. They kind of just like kept all the terms. They have like, they call them assisting bishops. People usually say, quote, Bishop Bob or Archbishop Tom. They have like, but they also have like primates. I don't know what that means.
The Anglican Church is just they just made shit up as they went along.
Yeah,
They're like, whatever. Henry VIII got a little drunk and like wrote down all these random names, and like we're still living with the consequences. Yeah. So Lady Barrick is basically like, Charity looks exactly like you. Everybody's gonna think she's your like bastard daughter, and like nobody's gonna care about the truth. And so Lady Barrick the next day, she tells Vance about Charity, and she's like, come and get your daughter. And so she tells Helen, she's like, make sure Charity's ready because Van's coming from her. And Helen is like, over my fucking dead body. And so we got another great rescue mission in which Cassandra, Pandora, and Mrs. Abbott, the housekeeper, all like coordinate to help Helen escape with Charity. And she like puts us off to the train station. And I also really, throughout this book, we've just gotten some like anti-bustle propaganda. For those of you that don't know, the bustle is like a big like butt pad to make like Victorian women's butts seem super big. There were 2 bustle eras, and frankly, I think this is just like the ugliest fucking Victorian dress form of all time. Like people like to dunk on the 1830s for being ugly, but like the bustle era fucking sucks. And also, it's really difficult to walk in because it makes the skirt like super tight around your ankles.
Didn't Rhys say that it was basically out of fashion too? Like Helen's out of fashion.
Yeah, well, but there were 2 bustle eras. Yeah, so anyway, I just really. Helen's like, I'm not gonna wear a bustle because like I need to be able to move freely, and I'm like, yes. Shame the bustle. Like, I'm very you get very annoyed when people shame corsets, but I'm like, absolutely roast the bustle like anytime you want. She goes to the train station. She's gonna go to her country estate, and then like from there she's gonna like disappear with Charity.
So she like buys her ticket, and she's like just sitting there, like the chairs are really uncomfy. We get another badass scene actually. So this is back to Albion Vance. He had brought up this like fairy tale that I've never heard of, but it's basically,
I've heard of it.
You heard of it? So it's a girl who wears red shoes to her communion, and because it's like a metaphor for like sin, and so she has to dance until she dies. And Helen like hates that story.
Christian Andersen. It's one of those like fucked up.
Yeah, Helen hates that story. Albion had like compared her mother to it. So she buys like a fairy tale book to read to Charity, and sees that story in it, and she's like, fuck no, and like just full on rips out the page. And she's like, I had to rip out a page of Jack and the Beanstalk too, but it's a worthy sacrifice. And she sees like another woman giving her the side eye, like judging her for it. So she just like makes eye contact as she crumples it up and stuffs it in her bag.
I love it. And at one point in the book, Helen is like, wow, I actually discovered that like I actually really like shocking people. And so like these are just like these moments where she's like, fuck you, like fuck all y'all, like I don't care.
And the horse you rode in on. So okay, so they're sitting there, and the ticket guy who sold her, the old like, you know, nice
whatever ticket guy
like
comes
like
up.
Elderly, like he's non-threatening. Okay,
Christmas
he comes up,
man.
yes, and he's like, he's like, oh, I'm sorry to tell you, but your train has been delayed by an hour. And I normally don't do this, but since you're the only woman with a child here, would you want to like come back and wait in the like conductor room or whatever, like some like nice
somewhere
little,
where it's like warm.
My
and, like,
office, it's
cushions.
warmer, comfy. And she's like, yeah, thank you. So he takes her back there, and just as he like shuts the door, she's like, wait a second, he addressed me as my lady. How the fuck would he know about my courtesy title? I introduced myself as Mrs. Smith. She's like, fuck. And she tries to like open the door, and who's there but that creepy guy who had like rescued, quote unquote, rescued
the
them.
random guy.
And she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, sorry, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. Super shady. Just fucking explain it. Like, God, this makes you so angry. At this point, I'm just like, fuck all of you. I want her to escape. Like, where do you get the nerve, the presumptuousness to lock her in here? I just want, God, fuck you. Like, get out of here. I just want her to like climb the window and like get on the train and never be seen again.
He's
like
protecting. Okay,
no,
but the next scene.
no. Where do you get the right to do that? You're it's literally false imprisonment.
She's running away because she thinks that he won't love her. She's running away because she's under a misconception. Listen, again, this is one of those situations where if it happened in real life, I would be very angry. But in a book,
no,
I'm like,
this is one of those situations where in real life I would be very angry. In a book, I'm very angry.
No, okay. So we got to see who walks in. But Rhys Winterborne, and he is pissed. He is righteously angry, and they go to talk in a different room, and he has his hand on her neck as if she were a helpless kitten being held by the scruff.
Which, again, it treats her like a child the entire time. I mean,
I do hate when men hold like women by the neck. There's just even like in real life, I see that, and there's just something visually uncomfortable about that. Ready? So Helen tells him the truth. And that she's like, obviously we can't get married now. Like, I'm going to leave. I'm going to take Charity. I'm going to go to France. She's like, I'm going to take Charity to France. I can look after her there. You can go on with your life here, and I won't be here to bother anyone. He muttered 2 quiet words. What? I said, try it! Yeah! Try to leave me and see what happens. Go to France. Go anywhere and see how long it takes for me to reach you. Not 5 fucking minutes!
Every step you take, every breath you make.
Shut up. Okay, I'm not done.
Every single
I love
day.
You. Shut up. I don't give a damn if your father is the devil himself. I'd let you stab a knife into my heart if it pleased you, and I'd lie there loving you until my last breath. And then blah, 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 blah. She said, you said any child of his is demon spawn. And he says, I didn't mean you. Whatever damned evil thing I ever might say, it never means you. Every time you look at me, you'll remember that I'm half his. No. His hand came to the side of her face, his thumb wiping her tears. You're all mine. His voice was deep and shaken. Every hair on your head, every part of you was made to be loved by me. How do you not love this man? I love whatever it is you're made of. Rachel is giving me a very judgmental. I am like having like spasms, and Rachel's just judging me from her apartment.
It's just like, I think it's just my instinctive need to root for the person that's like running. Like if I'm watching like a crime, something about a crime, I'm always, and the criminal is like on the run, always rooting for the criminal, obviously. If I'm watching Helen try to run away from Rhys, like get
She's
gone,
not
girl.
Trying to run away from Rhys. She's trying to run away from Vance.
Sure. But like run away,
anyway,
period.
They have a hot makeout after Rhys is like, I love you so fucking much. I literally don't care. I don't care. Like, I love you. And I will love Charity too. Because like, she's half you. And then he's like, all right, you go wait in the carriage. I'm going to go fuck this man up. And so he goes over to Vance, who has like arrived to like search for Helen. And basically Rhys is like, I will fuck you up if you don't, and like explains this in very graphic terms. He's like, I will pull out your organs with a fishing line if you do not leave England forever.
Yeah.
And Albion Vance is like, yep, all right, heading to France tomorrow. Sounds good.
So it basically solves like Lady Barrick's problem, I feel like, if he's not going to come back to like claim his title.
Yeah. And then they climb into the carriage. Rhys meets Charity. He names her with a Welsh name. He calls her Caris. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
I meant to like note.
I don't know how it's spelled. I've only heard it spelled
Carys.
Yeah,
with a Y. Caris. See, Rhys with a Y, Caris with a Y.
It's true.
Anyway, it means little loved one in Welsh, which is so fucking cute.
Yeah, I do like that, especially because I just hate the name Charity. And like, you know, they go about like how it has like all the connotations of like, you know, being an orphan.
Rhys is like, no daughter, no child of a Winterborne would have a name meant to humble her.
Yeah.
So he's like immediately like, Pa has arrived.
For sure. But there also is the element of like, this is a 4-year-old who has a name. He does make an effort. He's like, do you mind if I call you something that sounds similar? So it's kind of like played off as like a nickname. So it's not as jarring, but it's like, yeah.
He does ask like both her and Helen's permission. He's like, he doesn't just like name the child. But anyway, so Caris is like, she's crawling all over him, and she like goes into his like jacket, and he's like, are you sure she's not a pickpocket? And she like pulls out his peppermint creams, and she like eats one, and he's like whiffed, which is like his Welsh thing that he says like whiffed a lot, and then she imitates him, and she's like whiffed, and then she sits on his lap weighing no more than a cat. And then Rhys is like, all right, we're gonna elope to Wales because it's a full-time job taking care of you, Helen. You keep putting yourself in dangerous situations, and also we really like fucking and we haven't got to fuck in a long time, so we're gonna go to Wales.
I feel like as much as I railed against the first half, like I really I do like the sister plotline, like because that's totally something. Like I totally would do that. And I feel like if Rhys wasn't on board with that, like, I don't know.
I think it's just the ultimate, like, him choosing Helen over his, like, hatred of Albion Vance is just such, like,
it's not even a choice. Like, he doesn't even question.
No, right, yeah. But he's like, that's the thing. But like us, the reader, being like, Rhys puts Helen first. It's like in such a tangible way. And not only does he put Helen first, but he puts what Helen cares about first. He puts Karis first.
I think it's also just my own like hero complex of like being so certain, even though I have no proof, that I would do the same thing Helen did. That makes me like finally be able to identify with her.
Well, that's Helen's whole journey, is that she like she recognizes the inner strength that she always had and that she always like felt like she had to suppress.
Yeah.
And it's because Rhys makes her feel safe enough to like take those risks.
Yeah.
Anyway, they elope to Wales. The next chapter, there's just something so funny to me. The next chapter begins with, Fernsby, I'm eloping. And for whatever reason, that line is just like carved into my brain. Like, I don't know why. I just take such delight in that line.
I also really enjoy when he was like, they're talking about getting a special license, and he's like, the Archbishop owes me a favor. Okay, like we'll get the license.
The literal Archbishop of Canterbury.
She's like, what's the favor? And he's like, he'll know. He'll know.
And I'm like, I want to, Lisa, what is it? I want to know.
Yeah, like
what did this department store owner do for the Archbishop of Canterbury that like put him in his debt?
Right. And he's just like, he's just like listing all these like extravagant like things that he wants done in like a drop of like one day, like less than a day. And he's like, don't bother me with details, just make it all happen.
You know what Fernsby does, because she's competent.
Yeah. Rhys and Tom Severin have made up.
Tom lets Rhys borrow. He's like, as a wedding present, I'll let you borrow my sweet ass private train car. And again, this is another thing where I'm like, why don't we have this anymore? Like,
right, like the way it was
it's
described,
literally a train car that can just be attached to like the main
hansom cab. They were talking about the servants being in hansom cabs on the train, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like what? I guess it's like inside the car.
Well, a hansom cab is like a carriage.
Yeah, I know.
No, like a literal like with a horse and carriage.
Right, but why are the servants in carriages on the train?
I think that the servants are traveling via carriage or something. I don't know. Whatever.
Oh, maybe.
Anyway,
okay.
they go in this sick ass private car. Rhys is like, Helen has like bows on the back of her dresses. And Rhys is just such a little boy. He's like, he can't stop playing with them, and he accidentally like tears one at one point. They fuck on the train, and it had me wondering whether there's like a train version of the Mile High Club. You know, like
what would it be called?
The like Mile
West
Club. Yeah, I don't know. Like, what's the version? What's the train version? I feel like there should be one. I feel like there should be one for like each mode of public transportation. Like the Greyhound bus version. Yeah, but then so they're in like Wales, and Helen's like, LOL, there's like a crowd of like Welsh people who want to like see the famous like Rhys Winterborne, because he's like a Welsh icon.
He's an icon like, everywhere. He's definitely like a public figure.
Yes, but like he's specifically like a hero to like working class people and like Welsh people. And then they all watch, and then they get married, and Karis and Rhys picked out an oathing stone together, little tie back. Like Rhys is like, Karis and Rhys went on a walk. He's like, we went on a walk yesterday, and like she helped me pick it out. And then he's like, where are we gonna throw it? Like, and we can throw it like wherever you want. He's like, there's even like a lake that's said to be the final resting place of Excalibur. And Helen is like, fuck yeah. Like, she like has like a King Arthur thing this whole time.
Oh yeah. Oh, I did like when they're getting married, she's like, I don't have anyone to give me away. And he's like, you need no man to give you away. Just come to me of your own free will, and our love will last until the stars lose their shining. And our love will last till the stars lose their... No, I can't do it.
It's not. It's an Irish accent.
I could do it if I just heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so it's the epilogue. They're talking about Pandora's board game. And Rhys is basically like, listen, she'll be super successful, but like eventually like she'll realize that like money like doesn't make her like fully satisfied. And then Helen is like, were you unhappy before you met me? And Rhys is like, she's like, were you lonely before you met me? And then he's like, as lonely as any man would be with half his soul missing. I'm like, God, just gotta throw in one more line. Like, I'm saying, as if this man doesn't have enough zingers in this book. Lisa's like, I'm gonna sprinkle one more in. Helen is pregnant, and she tells Rhys, and Rhys is so soft and weird. He's like, Helen, my treasure, like, you're standing on this hard floor, like, you're wearing a corset. Is it going to squish the baby? He's just like, God. Oh my God, are you gonna be okay? And Helen is like, I'll be fine. Like, it's all chill. And Rhys is just like, he's just such a soft man. He's Pa. Yeah. I didn't realize that until this reading, that like I think that's why I like him so much, just because he's Pa.
Oh my God.
Are you converted?
No, but I'm good. I'm happy for you.
Evil! I love him so much. He's my favorite, like, by far. Let's discuss cats.
Okay. Well, I honestly did not pick up on the Helen cat stuff. And I wrote in here, I was like, well, Rhys is always compared to a wolf. Helen doesn't really seem fierce enough to be a cat. So like, I would say she's low. But now there's all the cat. Yeah. I didn't even, I literally wrote down some quotes where Helen is compared to a cat and still like didn't make the connection.
It's like
kitten is not cat though. I mean, I guess it is.
No, but there are many scenes where she's compared to a cat explicitly.
Yeah.
And like, Karis is a cat and Karis is like just a mini Helen.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there's like, it's like the most traditional sense of the cat scale, in which is just cat language. Like, characters are compared to cats.
Sure. Yeah.
There was definitely mewling at least once, at least a few times. There was definitely growling from Rhys. I know Rhys is compared to a wolf, but again, like, I like the term bear-like man is very much like Rhys in my head, and we've already established that bears are cat adjacent.
Yeah, they definitely are. Yeah, like honestly, I'm trying to he doesn't give me wolf vibes at all. Like,
he definitely gives me,
besides the description,
dog vibes in terms of like protecting, like his like protective instincts.
Yeah, maybe. Would you rather be raised by wolves or lions?
Wolves.
Why?
Don't lions, like male lions, try to eat their young?
Oh, that's true. I didn't think of that. My logic,
that happens to wolf.
I would also say wolves, but because I feel like if a wolf is going to eat you, it's going to eat you right away. But like if you're accepted into the pack, I feel like you're pretty much good. Whereas I feel like a lion, like they might initially not eat you, but like at any moment it could be like, all right, it's over. Anyway, Rhys is very like fierce. Like a cat.
Rhys doesn't give me cat vibes.
No.
He gives me, you know what he's like? He's like a mama bear.
He's like a werewolf.
He's like a mother
but, like,
bear.
Hairless. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so weird because I imagine it's like specified that Rhys doesn't have a hairy chest.
Yeah.
Which is, I know that there's like a whole conversation about how he doesn't have hair on his chest. Yeah. But I imagine him with hair.
That's like it's interesting. I feel like that kind of body hair on men is one of the like, I wouldn't say like truly neutral, but it's like one of those things that's like just personal taste. But I wouldn't say there's like a clear split of like it's bad or good.
Yeah. I imagine like near like Alec Baldwin level of hair.
I have no idea what Alec Baldwin's chest looks like. What? Why would I know that off the top of my head?
Young Alec Baldwin. Look it up.
Okay. I'm on Bing though, so no guarantees. It'll come up. I mean, I see. Oh my god. And the ass cut. What the fuck? I wouldn't even call that like top, like peak amount of hair though. It's disturbing, but it's not.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying that's the level of chest hair that I picture.
Yeah.
Young Alec Baldwin.
Oh my god, you have to link to this. You have to link to this picture.
Which one?
I'll send you the link.
There's many of them. Wow. Yeah, no, I'm not thinking of. Okay. Anyway.
All right, cat scale.
Anything more to discuss? I wouldn't say any of the other side characters were cats. Maybe like Devin. Oh, Lady Barrick is a cat. For sure.
Kathleen is a cat because Kathleen. Lady Barrick?
But it's spelled with a K.
Lady Barrick's not a cat. Yeah, it's true. Lady Barrick's not a cat. Lady Barrick is a hyena.
No.
We're not using her hyena and derogatory anymore.
Are definitely
our hyenas.
They're like chihuahuas. Yeah.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Justice for hyenas.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, 6.
7.
6.5. Actually, I'm gonna go with 7.
Why are you going with 7?
I just thought about it more, and I'm like, there really are like I think I was being influenced by the fact that this is like the traditional sense of the cat scale as opposed to like vibes, you know, because none of the characters really gave off strong cat vibes, but there was a lot of cat language.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we've really encountered before. I feel like most of our cat spells have been based on vibes.
Yeah. No, there's been some mewing for sure. Mewling.
Yeah, but I don't think that's like been the deciding factor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For most of our stuff, because it hasn't been that frequent. But like cats were really frequent in this. Lisa Kleypas continuing the tradition. Where can they find us, Rachel?
Well, Allison, they can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at We Read It One Night, or on Twitter at We Read It Podcast. Or they can email us at wereaditonenight@gmail.com.
And you can also leave us a rating and review wherever you listen, because that really helps us out. And if you have anything you think we do well, please give us a shout out. And if you have anything you think we could do better, let us know too. And if you just want to write Godspeed, comrades, and leave 5 stars, that's also great. Like, what a fun meme. Like, someone comes on like our Apple Podcast page and is like, why are all these people writing Godspeed, comrades? Like, I would be intrigued. I might download an episode. Like, yeah, you would really help us out. And if you want to suggest a book, that is a place to leave it as well as our emails and our DMs. We have some episodes coming up that were listener suggestions. So,
you know, that just reminded me of the other day I was discussing like unions, like having like a graduate student union, and someone in my program was like, oh, Rachel, like, how do you feel about unions? I feel like you wouldn't really be into them. And I was like, excuse me, comrade? What? Do you see my sweatshirt? Do you see my face? Does this look like the face
you
of a
were
towel?
Wearing the sweatshirt?
I don't know if I was, but
Godspeed, comrades.
Godspeed.